Hey guys.
What is
Whoa.
that?
Oh, shit.
my God.
Not as exciting as when Jake did his
Well, because
thumbs
I
up or
figured out
whatever
how it
was when he...
works.
Oh, nice.
I figured it out.
This is bad for the podcast listeners, by the
know.
way. They can't see what this is.
I'm sorry.
Or anyone that just listens to this, even on YouTube, where they just put it on their car and shit and they can't see. Basically, we're putting on a light show isn't open, okay? Probably
Those
forgetting
stupid
the fact that the
visual
podcast
effects
is
when you're on webcam.
Yes, exactly right.
But
that's it.
The Apple
We
ones are
take the little
good.
joys.
The Apple ones are good. Like,
Did you see this commercial this week?
I
This week?
Oh, the iPad commercial?
Yeah. Did you see it?
yeah, it was awful.
They've actually taken it down and apologized for it. Have you
Wow.
ever heard of a company? Well, I'm sure it's happened plenty of times before with ads, but it's been a hot minute since I've heard of a major corporation putting out an ad, and they've taken it down and apologizing for it.
Also, can I just be the Apple nerd for a second, or at least the old Apple nerd, where a company that pushed boundaries in advertising back in the day, multiple periods, are now on the back foot apologizing for an ad. It's just crazy. It's where's Steve when you need him?
It's
Not really,
Well,
but
we know where he is. So,
The thing is as well, with the Apple stuff, it's just did you guys have the "You've Been Tangoed" advert? So there was this advert from I want to say 20 years ago, and I feel horrible saying that, but there was a Tango drink advert where there was a whole thing where it's you've been tangoed, and you'd I think there was a guy who's dressed in orange and he'd slap you around the ears.
Oh.
And then there was this, I don't know if it was an urban legend, but apparently someone lost their hearing because they got slapped too
I've
hard.
heard that urban legend too.
And
such a brutal country. You people are so mean to each other. I'm not
I'm really
surprised.
glad we never had Tango now that you describe it this
What
way.
is Tango?
It's an orange color.
Is it Fanta?
We have Tang. Is it
It's
just you
not-
guys
No,
added an
it's
O?
not Tang.
It's not Tang. It's more orangey than Fanta. I don't know if they even make it anymore. I think it was a cheaper equivalent to Fanta.
Right.
But it was You've Been Tangoed was such a big thing in the UK. Also, Belly's Gonna Get You. Did you have that
Belly's
one?
gonna get ya. Is that the Ozempic advertising line?
No. There was this advert where it was a giant belly and it would chase people down the street. I can't even remember what it was for.
That sounds terrifying.
I
Did
don't
you
like
just
that.
dream this up, by the way?
No.
Is it
and
the thing? Does it open up like a mouth, like a maw?
But I can't remember what it was for, but it was just there was a song or something, it would go, Belly's gonna get you. So it was messed up. What can I say? But anyway, British advertising, Apple advertising. Hi everyone.
Terrifying. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Friends Per Second podcast. I'm the host this week, right? Yes.
You are.
I see that on the paper. This is episode 45, and we've been cooking on a lot of stuff for this episode. We have a conversation with some folks at Airship Syndicate talking about Wayfinder and the changes to that game. We have an interview with Dom Mathews, the studio head from Ninja Theory, about the new Hellblade game that's releasing soon. And then we have a bunch of stuff to complain about and worry about as well with all the headlines. So I feel like that's probably where we should start. I believe actually we postponed recording this conversation because we were well, with all the Xbox stuff going on, the news is going to move rapidly. There's going to be a response. I haven't really seen.
And we should also say that we're recording this. Today is Tuesday in Australia, so Monday in the US.
Yes.
And this will go up on the weekend. So it's possible that a lot of stuff changes this week. The reason we're recording so early is because I'm traveling this week, so we wanted to kind of knock it out. So apologies if there have been major developments since our conversation here. But, that's
Can't help
the
it.
nature of timeline, sadly.
Yeah, I still think it's a good conversation to have because, well, it's also interesting as a follow-up to last week because our last podcast was focused around what's Xbox doing? What's going on? And then we got some sort of an answer. So just for people who aren't caught up, Bloomberg had reported this at first. Arcane Austin, Tango Gameworks, Alpha Dog Studios behind Mighty Doom, the mobile game, and Roundhouse Games, a support studio, are all being shut down. Specifically, Roundhouse Games are being moved to Elder Scrolls Online, but those other three studios are being shut down seemingly suddenly, surprisingly, to a lot of the people working on that. Arcane Austin was working on updating Redfall reportedly.
It was up
and
to 5 hours beforehand. There was a change log that someone posted.
And then, of course, Tango Gameworks, the Shinji Mikami founded studio for stuff like The Evil Within. Most recently, the hit game Hi-Fi Rush, a game that I really loved.
I literally handed them a BAFTA for that game like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah,
that really blows.
Like your prestige award-winning game that was a hit by all metrics according to Aaron Greenberg.
Yeah,
gone.
I don't even know where to start. It's just before we even dive into anything. It is upsetting because you see the pursuit of new IP and like exciting new things, and like we saw that with something like Hi-Fi Rush, but to them, I guess apparently it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I mean, you never really know exactly what's going on with these sorts of decisions, right?
Yeah.
So we can only go on what they've told us,
yes,
right? And what they told us is we're shutting it down. And it's like,
that's it.
Cool. Okay, great. I mean, you tell us in one moment that it's successful and it's smashed every metric that you were hoping for and whatever else. So we'll take you at your word for that. And then you tell us that you're shutting it down. That's it. Okay, great. Then Sarah Bond gets up at Bloomberg. Did you guys see this Sarah Bond thing?
This was rough.
I mean, I don't, not to defend the corporations, but I do not understand how they put her in front of a journalist, specifically the outlet that broke the story, and not prepare her an answer, because that answer was shocking. And that is an absolute kick in the teeth to anyone who works at Xbox or has been affected by these layoffs. It's insane, that answer.
But to be fair as well, like, if you, like, Sarah Bond is a very smart person.
Yeah.
So it's perfectly possible for her to come up with a response. It doesn't need PR handlers to come up with a response to that question. Like, she's capable, you know? And so I kind of, so just so you know, if anyone hasn't heard her response yet, it was very much just waffle. It was just straight waffle. It was word salad. It was like, oh, we're prioritizing a long-term commitment to our products and services. And, you know, we're really excited about the Fallout TV show and Indiana Jones. And one of the things I love about games is that they're creative and the metrics for success are different, but everything we do is grounded in the future success of Xbox. If it sounds like I'm exaggerating, I'm really not.
Like, I kind of
nailed that answer there.
No,
right?
it was the Michael Scott, like, sometimes I just start a sentence and hope I find where it's going along the way. Like.
It was terrible. And it's kind of like, yeah, you knew that question was coming. You knew that's all people are talking about right now, and to not give any proper response to that was nuts. And
yeah, I think it's also part of I guess Xbox, the teams, I don't know, like they are confident in their people and they go out front and stuff. Like, I mean, you remember Phil Spencer right out front after Redfall, he had a kind of funny interview and he stuck with it and, like, you know, took it on the chin. So I don't know if they were like thinking of doing the same thing here, but it didn't land for me. It did.
Yeah.
It didn't land for anyone. It was really terrible. And yeah, it really did feel disrespectful to people who lost their jobs, because she was just, so at times she was saying the exact opposite of what was actually going on. She was talking about, it's important that we make sure our products and services are there during the down times too. And it's like, well, you just closing these studios during the downtime. So how does that work? You know what I mean? That's what Dingo Macabre said in his response. Yeah. He's the creative director at Arcane Leon working on Blade. He's like, you know, stick with us during the bad times too. Make us proud during the bad times too, you know?
Yep.
It's frustrating, the mixed messaging, because you have Matt Booty in charge of Xbox Game Studios speaking in a town hall saying like, oh, we want games that, you know, receive acclaim and receive awards, and we want to like work on, and they just, you know, offloaded the studio that made them Hi-Fi Rush. I know that's like a popular talking point, but like it's because it's so blatantly obvious, it's so confusing. Like, well, what are you doing here? Like, I don't know. Is it like they just like, they're looking at Bethesda now and they're just like, all right, we just need another Fallout like right now. That's the only thing we can do. Safe IP, go. I don't know what the hell they're thinking.
Because remind me, because they bought Bethesda, 2020?
3 years ago.
Were there significant...
Longer than that, I think.
Has it been longer than
I think
that?
it was early 2020.
I think so. Yeah, 2020 sounds about right. It's in that ballpark.
I mean,
yeah.
Either way, were there significant cuts at Bethesda then?
No, there weren't. There have been cuts. There have been different cuts since then at smaller levels, mainly on the publishing side. Never really, I don't think, on the studio side that I can recall. So yeah, I mean, you're always going to expect that they're going to make some cuts after some kind of merger acquisition happens. Despite what they say, it always happens at some point, and this seems to be the some point. But the nature of them, and I think it's quite different for each example within that the decision, right? So there was one studio which they're merging into another, and it's like, okay, everyone gets to keep their job.
Yeah,
okay, we understand. I'm sure it's going to be inconvenient for some people who might need to relocate or whatever. That sucks, but at the same time, people get to keep their jobs. That's cool. Number two is a mobile studio that's being shut down. Mobile's always a super risky play. It's like either you go and make billions. If you just make a few million, then that's it. They shut it down. I know Nintendo are really famous for that, where they have all these. Because you read these headlines like Nintendo is sunsetting this game. You're like, wow, it must have flopped. And then you look it up and you're like, that game made like $300 million. What's going on here? You know what I mean? Like, that is actually how decision making works in the mobile world.
I was going to say, especially now that they have King. When they're looking at Candy Crush numbers and they're like, oh, Mighty Doom is not pulling in the same.
Yes. So, but it still obviously is really shitty. I mean, admittedly, I don't know much about that studio, so I don't know the circumstances, but it's still disappointing. But then you get to Arcane and it's like a really complicated scenario, right? Because, Arcane obviously had Redfall. And no one is going to say that game didn't suck, because it did.
Yeah.
And, they were working on updates for it. I maintained that was always a terrible idea, because the amount of work to actually salvage Redfall was huge and so far beyond what you can actually accomplish with a modest live service model. Like it's if you were to really commit resources to that over the really long term, sure. If you were to do the Fallout 76 treatment with that, sure, and just keep pumping stuff into it until it eventually sticks, sure. But there was no way that Arcane was going to get that level of resourcing for that project. The ship had the horse had bolted. Any work on that just seemed like a waste of time. Before that, though, the studio had made Prey Mooncrash and Prey, and they'd led the development of Dishonored, which I think is a talking point that gets lost, I think. And I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, because I'm pretty sure I've seen it like 4 or 5 places. But like, Arcane Austin did lead Dishonored.
Yeah.
And then they were supported by Leon.
It was a co-pro. So
yeah, that's right.
Raf Carl Antonio, who was formerly at Arcane, was he's the guy from Prey. He left, but like they had a thing where it was like, it wasn't Arcane Austin, it wasn't Arcane Leon, it was Arcane. They had 2 studios, and there's stuff like, I think level design was done out of one of them, and narrative was done out of the other one, and art was done out of the other one. So it was like co-production at the very least. Not like, there's a lot of people who kind of have been saying, oh, but Dishonored is Leon. It was like, not the original game.
Yeah.
Not the original game.
Yeah, that's true. 2 was Leon for sure. Yeah. And so that kind of legacy is huge. It's hugely important in the history of video games. And I think set against that is all these rumors that Arcane Austin had massive amounts of talent drained during Redfall.
Yeah,
and so it's kind of like, well, if the studio had already lost a lot of its talent, what are Microsoft keeping alive? Is it a ship of Theseus sort of thing? Yeah. But the truth is, you did have some people there. I don't exactly know how many, but certainly there was still some Arcane Austin people there for sure. And they wanted to make another Dishonored game. That was all but confirmed at this point. They're in the pitching process for another Dishonored. And Microsoft ultimately makes the decision to not go ahead with that. Mm-hmm. They're making the decision to not go ahead with the Dishonored sequel, which is a real bummer.
Yeah.
Because
a personal attack.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this it really comes to like the quick of it. Like, the promise of Xbox was always like, yeah, we're gonna do that stuff. We're gonna like support these teams, and we're gonna let them make these games. And Phil Spencer comes out wearing a T-shirt of some pokey little game from back in the day that he wants to like remaster or reboot or whatever. like that was the thing. That was what Xbox was trying to say they were about. And then obviously Arcane Austin comes to them and says we want to make a Dishonored game. Sure, that would have likely needed some studio rebuild, but that should have been what Microsoft would be committed to. Like that.
What did you buy them for?
Yeah, and that's what Tango was also doing. That's the report, is that Tango was also pitching their next project. It would have required resourcing and building up, and didn't want to do that.
Is it poor long-term planning? Because like I don't understand like timelines and stuff for stuff like this, because I just see it as like they bought Bethesda and they're like, we're excited to let them do their thing and just give them more resources to do their thing. And here are two Bethesda sub-studios that barely put out a game and they're already on the chopping block. Is it like financial? Is it economic headwinds changing? Is it like, I just don't understand it.
It's like you need to put the Social Network poster with Phil's face on it, and it's like, can't spend $70 billion without closing a few studios, because that's where we're at. It's like, this is the investment coming home to roost, isn't it? It's like, line must go up. Line must go up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we never know what's really going on here, right? But what have they said publicly? Or not even publicly, in like the leaked town hall meetings and what have you. Matt Booty says it's about, and he said that in his release actually, it's about prioritizing the high impact titles. So clearly they want to put their weight behind the bigger IPs. Yeah. And then this Jill Braff, who's like head of ZeniMax Publishing, she was in this town hall meeting as well. And apparently she said that it's really hard to manage 9 studios from a central, like a central lean team. And it's kind of like, well, why did you acquire all these studios then if you can't manage them? Or why can't you just fatten out that central team so it isn't quite so lean? Like, that's a really bullshit thing to hear, that poor executives are overworked overseeing all this stuff. Like, that's ridiculous. But I mean, and I guess my suspicion with all of this is that your scale changes when you acquire Activision Blizzard. You start caring about different numbers, because if you had to grow 10% pre-Activision Blizzard, that's one thing. If you now need to grow 10% when you've got an additional $70 billion worth of value attached to you, that really changes your thinking about what you're going to devote your time to, right? And Activision as a company, they have this massive history of so many games behind them. Remember the days when like Activision used to release heaps of video games?
Oh my god!
Oh yeah, all the tie-ins.
Yeah, it was a huge funnel at the top, right? And then you watched it just shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. And then by the end, what did they release? Call of Duty, the Crash Bandicoot game, which they just seem to throw out there, like no, and the Spyro reboot. They published Sekiro, which was a weird thing, and I don't even know why they did that, but whatever. That's about it, right? So, I think these mega publishers realize that if you can find that live service and just dump everything into it, it becomes extremely profitable. That's what, Rockstar has done, obviously, where they used to make tons of games, and now they just make one. And, Activision used to make tons of games. Now they make one. And Microsoft, it looks like it's perhaps looking to copy that model, where they're going to make massive Fallout games and Elder Scrolls games and maybe Doom, but I don't know about that one.
And Doom's rumored for Summer Game Fest, right? Tom Warren with his italicizing, but is Doom?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think you can do that with Doom in the same way that you can do it with Fallout. Like, I think you can do a massive push for live service Fallout and spin-offs and this sort of shit, whatever. Yeah. I reckon you can go down that path with that IP. With Doom, I don't think so. I think that's not really the right fit for that, because...
Is Quake Champions still a thing?
Say again?
Is Quake Champions still a thing?
I mean, yeah, but like, very small. Like, that genre is pretty much dead, so... Yeah, so I because I put out a video on this, and I'm very much like,
it's a very good video.
It just feels like they're doing an act, like the sort of Activisioning of Xbox, where you've got they are choosing now to focus on their biggest hitting franchises, because they want to direct all their resources into those, and they want to pump those to the point where they become these behemoths that generate live service revenue. Obviously, at the same time, there's mobile, which is a huge push for them, and that's going to be kind of make more money for them than anything else other than COD. And then, there's COD. So,
do you think COD is going to go on Game Pass? Because that's the other thing that we haven't really talked about, where it's like Game Pass, part of this acquisition strategy was to get these games that would be day and date on Game Pass, day one, get people in. There's talks, rumors that they're going to increase the subscription cost for Game Pass. And then there's also been massive, allegedly, internal debate whether to put COD on Game Pass, if that's going to bolster their subscription numbers versus, you know, all the revenue they'll potentially lose by just selling it normally. I don't think it will.
I never believed that COD would make it onto Game Pass. I'll rephrase, actually. I always thought that older CODs would come to Game Pass, back catalog COD, right? Because sure, why not? Like, yeah, put COD Ghosts on Game Pass. Who gives a fuck, right? But the newest COD, are you going to really like miss out on the hundreds of millions of dollars of guaranteed revenue that gives you? I don't think so, man. That's just not a thing, you know?
Yeah, no.
So that always just struck me as a strange conversation. Like, why would you acquire that game and then give it away in that way? It's just, yeah, sure, Game Pass revenue recurring, absolutely. But that Game Pass is hit a point now where it's just flatlined, and I don't believe COD is going to be the thing that tips it over so that it snowballs further from there. Maybe you get like an initial bump out of the COD numbers, absolutely, sure. But do you continue to gross like Game Pass towards that 100 million subscribers goal on the back of COD? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So
no, I wonder if they would do a thing where it's like, if you have Game Pass or if you sign up to Game Pass, you get like a battle pass for free, and then they lock you into the system, and then you gotta stop paying.
Yeah.
Like something to incentivize, but the whole game going on would be, I don't see it.
Yeah. So I don't know, Jake. What do you think? What's your vibe on all this? Like
the only thing with me that, you know, the Activision comparison is really good, and unfortunately, like in my life, like we've been around for so long, and you see incredible studios get shut down, and like Activision in particular, like so many great studios have shut down over the years, and it's just like game industry bullshit happens. It's unfortunate. And what really hammered things in for me was like just a quote from Ryan McCaffrey at IGN, his piece, Phil Spencer in the Battle for Xbox's Soul. You know, he had some conversations with some Xbox people, former Xbox people off the record. And the quote is, "We all came to the same conclusion. It's no longer Xbox, but Microsoft gaming." And that's a sexy quote, but it's still kind of like clicked with me with everything that's been going on lately, like with the shuttering of these studios, the deprioritization of certain things, still waiting on so many games to be released. You know, this whole conversation with like Call of Duty and prioritizing sales and Activision and like, you know, focusing on just big IP. I was like, damn, there is really seemingly the start of a paradigm shift with Xbox. And yeah, I guess this is a big indicator of that. It's weird, especially like retroactively, like looking back at how much of an impact the Xbox 360 had, just in terms of like what it brought to the table, from like the games published, of course, but also like what the console did, what the interface did, like all that stuff, Xbox Live, all of that. And it just feels like that's so far in the rear view mirror from where we're at now. And, you know, that bums me out because there's so much potential for more, especially with Microsoft's war chest and like, you know, the idea of they are acquiring all these studios, but maybe they'll help them make better games. And we haven't seen too much of that yet. We got a glimpse of it, I feel like, with stuff like Pentiment, and like that was exciting. That was fun. And that was like, you know, but now I don't know where things are going.
Feels weird. I'm really intrigued to see what the Summer Game Fest presentation is, because I think in terms of messaging, there have been so many clips of just things that they've, like the Double Fine documentary clip that's going around.
Sure.
The clip of
that's brutal, that one, eh?
The other Sarah Bond one where she's talking about closing Lionhead, and it's just like, I'm really interested to see how they talk about this in a way that people are going to listen to, because that's another problem they've got right now, where it's like they have said all this stuff, they've made all these promises, and then they have shuttered these studios and laid off these teams. And it's just like, that's a PR problem now, where it's like, are people, I mean, that's the thing, like there are people like us who are entrenched in this and who are in the weeds and who follow everything. Does the average gamer really care?
I did want to bring that up. I did get a couple of texts from like my casual friends who only like half absorbed this stuff, and the sentiment was kind of like, wait, what the fuck? Am I gonna get like less games? What are they doing over there? Like, don't they have like all this money? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I was like, how did you see that headline? And they're like, Facebook. And I'm like, oh boy, there's your problem. First of all,
with an AI generated image of Phil Spencer.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, no, I agree. It's sort of, it would be when it does reach other people outside our like stupid niche little world of weirdos, then yeah, like it's definitely bigger news. And it definitely feels like it's a bigger shift. And because to this point, I think it's been such a weird year for Xbox, right? Because I think at end of last year, we were like, it's all good. It's just ship sailing in the same direction. We're all fine, whatever. And then this multi-platform stuff comes along, and you're like, oh, damn, okay. And that really was when the conversation started. Like, oh, shit, all right, well, what's going on over there, you know? Then the news of console sales being down. And console sales are down for other platforms as well, of course. But they've been down for Xbox longer. And more than that, though, like the value proposition of Xbox the console made less sense most recently. Like you're always going to need a Nintendo console, and Sony insists that you still need to buy their console, but you actually don't need to buy an Xbox at this point. And Microsoft worked really hard to get the message out that you don't need to buy their console. And so, you know, that is just going to continue to snowball, obviously. And then, you know, most recently, these closures. Well, before that, I guess I should say as well, like 1,900 jobs cut.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's just like standard fare across the industry, and really doesn't speak to the overall health of any platform, because, you know, Sony did the same thing. Most publishers are doing the same thing. But yeah, these cuts really feel like a moment where it just feels like people are just kind of done with Xbox. I don't know if you guys have felt that, but seeing that in the chatter, people are like, that's it, man. I'm finished. I'm out. I've had enough. I don't have any faith. I don't have any trust. I really believe that this Tango closure was a fucking tactical blunder for them. Like, setting aside the fact that it's a bad call, as in, you know, in terms of that studio should still continue to exist and make video games, it's also just a tactical blunder, because look at how people have responded to this. Like, you can't close a studio that just released one of your best games ever. Like, that's fucking crazy. Do you know what I mean? And that just completely changes the way everyone thinks about your brand, the trust that we have in you to back those studios. And as a developer as well, like, you're seeing so much chatter on Twitter or whatever from developers being like, why would I go work for Microsoft Studio now? I have no faith that they're going to like keep me on, even if I happen to make a great game with my team, because it's almost like they're not making rational decisions at this point. Or if they are, they're not showing us the basis of those decisions, you know? So yeah, I mean, if I was a game maker, I would be so reluctant to sign up to a Microsoft-owned studio at this point, because even Jason Schreier is saying recently, like, oh, there's more cuts coming.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So just a huge amount of brand damage done. And it's like, for what? Like, Bobby Kotick gets $375 million on the way out the door. You know what I mean? That could have kept all those people in the job for years. For years, you know? And Microsoft's a $3 trillion company.
Someone did it where it was like, it's 17 years.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's why you look at those decisions, you're like, clearly, like a rational people making these decisions right now. Like, what's going on over there? That's why it just seems so crazy and whatever. And the whole thing about like, what are they going to say at Summer Games? It's like, I'm pretty past that, to be honest with you. Like, I actually don't really care what they say at this point. You can say whatever you like. I'm not really... It's not like I'm done with Xbox. It's not like that at all. Because like, I'm excited about some stuff coming from Xbox. Sure, absolutely, you know?
No,
sure,
I know how you feel.
Sure.
It's like I feel the same way. I am excited to see what Hellblade's all about. I still am excited to see what Fable's about, State of Decay 3, all these things they have in the works. But I'm less actively excited in what was the grand experiment of Xbox and what they've been trying this generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last 2 generations, really, because, I think Phil laid the groundwork for that with Xbox One. And I agree. And I think coming back to this conversation about like Microsoft gaming, I totally see it that way as well, in the sense that I don't really believe Microsoft is going to invest a lot of resources in the Xbox brand going forward. I think, their console is going to become less important. They're all about that shared ecosystem. I think they're going to align behind their publisher labels. Like, I think they're going to really pump Blizzard as a thing. They're going to pump Activision Call of Duty as a thing. They're going to pump King COD as a thing. They've already done that with Mojang and Minecraft. Bethesda's its thing with Fallout and Elder Scrolls and Doom, if they keep that around. That, I think, is how Microsoft is going to approach this going forward, rather than really being focused on Xbox. Because what is Xbox without a console? For real? Like, what is it?
Controller.
It's a good controller.
Favorite controller.
It's achievements. It's like trophies or whatever. I don't know. I think the console is what binds this notion of a platform together in this way. Like Steam is a thing that exists on my machine that I have a bunch of games installed on, right? And I love it, don't get me wrong. But like Xbox and Nintendo Switch and PlayStation are a different thing from Steam, because it is intrinsically tied to hardware. And when you sever that link, it's like, well, what is this thing now? They need to find an answer to that, because but I actually don't think they're interested in finding an answer to that. I think they're really just interested in those publisher labels. So yeah.
Well, with that, I think it's good to jump into a question actually that we got from a user. You can send these questions to contact@friendspersecond.com. This is from Michael, if I'm pronouncing that right, Mikal, who says, "Hi guys, longtime user, first time caller. I wonder if Microsoft will indeed significantly lower their investment in Xbox as a device, could create this market opportunity for a new manufacturer to enter the console market with the new generation in a couple of years. Maybe it's already too late to start working on such a device, or maybe the arms race will be solely focused on mobile PC gaming, like Steam Deck versus ROG Ally versus Lenovo Legion. What do you guys think? Would you even like to see some more consoles?"
Right now, and I said this in the last episode too, where it's like, I feel like I've become more platform agnostic, and I have a Steam Deck and I have a ROG Ally. And it's like
Roger Ally.
Roger Ally. I have those, and I just buy everything on Steam and Epic Games Store now. And it's like, if someone else comes along, like the Playdate, where it is this unique console with its own USP and like something cool that nothing else has, like, sure, I will try it out. But really, I think all my gaming going forward will be, it's like that ease. It's like, where am I more easily going to be able to access all of my games, unless it's something completely different. So I think, I don't even know who would kind of come forward into the fray at this point. Apple?
Yeah, the thing I feel like is that it would be Apple. Google tried multiple times. It's almost like it's like the American car manufacturers. They were called the Big Three, and it was always dubbed impossible to break through that. Because it's like it requires so much upfront investment to even get anything going. Things could happen, who knows? But I do almost feel like it's just going to become the ecosystem war. Maybe we'll see more escalation with Epic, or maybe another publisher or something will come along. I don't know. Ralph, I see you shaking your head. No,
I mean, I definitely don't see Epic all of a sudden becoming like a major platform. As in,
I don't see them making physical.
The Epic Games Store, for example, like Fortnite is gigantic. It's huge. It's bigger than we could possibly conceive. But the Epic Games Store, I mean, who's using that to buy their?
I used it just today, Ralph.
To do what? How dare you? Download a free game?
To download a copy of The Last of Us Part 1, yes.
And was it given to you for free, or did you buy it?
I may have gotten a code for it, yes.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Okay.
The Epic Games Store, the free game store strikes again.
Actually, I do. That's the thing. I do log in every week and I do get my free games.
That's it. That's what everyone does. Everyone has these gigantic libraries on Epic, and if you ever tried to sell it, it'd be worth like $3 because everyone has exactly the same free library, you know? Yeah, but I can't ever see new consoles entering the space at this point. That doesn't make any sense. And that's why I think it's so important to protect what we have, you know? Nintendo, obviously, they have no plans to change that overall business model. Sony, it seems as though are going to be, you know, doing more stuff on PC. For sure. The success of Helldivers, I think, guarantees that they need to move into that space. Even Square Enix this week announced that they're planning on pursuing a multi-platform strategy, which, you know, we have to assume is because them going with PlayStation all the time was a bad idea, you know? So, yeah, I mean, Sony, I think, are going to be making more moves in the PC space.
They got to figure out that PSN requirement.
Yeah,
oh my God.
But I still see them holding fast to hardware, and I'll be glad that they do because I agree with you. I play all my games on Steam for sure, but when I get a new PlayStation exclusive that's for the console, I'm really kind of like low-key excited about that.
Yeah,
because I'm like, all right, you've made this game for this thing. Let's do this, and there's only a couple of them a year. But it's nice to step into that ecosystem again, and it's nice to reconnect with it. Same with the Switch, where there's a handful of games every year that I will play, and I can only play them on the Switch. And
I also think like there should exist something other than just mobile gaming and high-end PC gaming. I mean, not just because like I want that, but also I feel like people have been trained for generations to expect also there's this fun plastic box that can play things.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, so no, I think the chances of anyone else entering the console space are like basically non-existent. If Apple are going to do anything, they're going to put some controllers on the side of a phone or a tablet, then and like, you know, do stuff with the App Store. They're not going to like release a dedicated gaming device. Like that's not a thing. Yeah. So yeah.
We'll come up with a console. I want to make my own console. I'm accepting investment now. If anyone
Soldier
wants
Boy.
to jump in, I have $1,300 ready to go. We can get investment going. Build up a console by gamers for gamers.
You guys want in? Big Theranos vibes at the moment. Yeah, it does all this stuff. Don't ask to see it in
motion. Sure. Yeah. All right, so next up, we have an interview with Dom Mathews, studio head of Ninja Theory, talking about Hellblade and all that. But we've actually had this interview scheduled for a while, well before all this Xbox stuff popped up. So we're actually pretty excited to talk to him in his specific position, Ninja Theory in their own specific position within Xbox and this. He had some insight, but also just the game itself. We're really looking forward to it. People are making a game and it looks cool as hell. So we're going to run over to that interview, but just before we do, a word from our sponsors.
So guys, tell me, you taking care of yourselves lately? Are you you eating right? You exercising? You doing what you're supposed to be doing?
I do one good thing for myself.
Tell us, Lucy, what is that one good thing that you do for yourself? Go on.
Every day. No, come on. AG1 has been a long time sponsor of the podcast. You know what I'm going to say. Every morning, there it is. I get my AG1, I mix it together, and I drink it. And it just starts my day off right because, look, I'm very busy, traveling a lot recently. It is wild how easy it is for me to fall out of my regular routine. Sure. And the first things that usually fall flat for me, laundry, never on top of that, and making sure that I'm doing things and taking care of myself properly. I'm a little rat in a human body, but at least I have my AG1.
They actually have travel sachets as well. Which have you got those as well? Yeah, they got those. So that's convenient for when you travel because I'm doing some travel at the moment, and yeah, that's it's handy. So
those take some practice to use though, because I tend to use mine in the morning. It's one scoop and water, so it's so easy. It's like the easiest thing in the world. You have water in the house, chances, but I usually do it in a little water bottle. I do a little shake business, but the travel packs, sometimes you're in a hotel room with just like a small little cup and then you try and mix it around with a coffee stir and you make a mess everywhere. I've done that, but it's still worth it because you feel energized, you feel good, and it's a good way to start the day.
Yeah, it contains things like prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut support. vitamin C and zinc to support immune health. It's just a good sort of multivitamin style supplement that makes you feel really good. And it, again, you know that you've started your day doing something good. We've been using it for literally months ever since they reached out to us, and it's been fantastic. So yeah, I really recommend checking it out if you'd like to, just feel a little bit better about yourself, know that you're doing something good every day to start your day. If you want to check it out, then we have a special deal with the Friends Per Second podcast. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/friends. Thanks AG1 for sponsoring Friends Per Second.
Dom, thank you so much for joining us. I have to ask, given everything that's been happening at Xbox recently, what's the mood like at Ninja Theory?
We're really excited about the launch of the game. The team have been working super, super hard. As you can imagine, on Hellblade 2, we're just over a week now until the game is being released. So people are really excited. A lot of love and care and passion has gone into the game. We've got a team of about 80 people working on the game, or about 100 people in total here at Ninja. So, the vibe is that people have made something that they're really proud of and looking forward to getting it into the hands of our fans.
I know I'm really excited about it. I was replaying Hellblade over the weekend. Hellblade kind of like an enormous success. And I think given the conversation with other Xbox game studios right now does recent events with things like Tango and Arcane recontextualize how you at the studio consider the success of your games?
I think for me, success is about making a game that players can really engage with and enjoy. So, when I think about success for Ninja Theory, and that's my job, is to think about that day in, day out. It's about how do we tell really compelling stories? How do we build a studio culture that we can be proud of? And how do I give the really wonderful team here the space and the freedom to go and express themselves creatively through the medium of a game? And I think particularly with Hellblade, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice was a game that really fortunately found its way into people's hearts, and people built a relationship with Senua and her journey. And we've had so many people tell us that Senua means so much to them. So success for me, and I think success for our team, is making the next step on Senua's journey be one that those people feel is worthy of that relationship that they've built with the character. So, that's really my definition of success: is how do we make a game that is pure in terms of our vision, and then how do we get that to be played by as many players as possible?
There has been a kind of discourse, I guess, online where it's like people are kind of worried for Hellblade a little bit and feel like it hasn't necessarily been marketed as aggressively, or people are like, oh, it's coming out in 2 weeks and this is the first tweet I've seen from Xbox proper. It's like, and you being head of the studio and being such a core part of the team and wanting to get this game in front of so many people, how do you react to that?
My focus is on making a great game with the people that we have, and I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of the game, and we think of ourselves here at the studio as being a team that focuses on using games as a incredible vehicle for taking people on journeys. And when I sit there and play Hellblade 2 now and play it with some of our team, like, I can only think that we are delivering on what our vision for the game is. And I'm proud of it, and I feel good about it. I feel good, and I'm excited about next week. I think people who loved Hellblade 1, people who love story-led, character-led action adventure games are going to enjoy the game. And I think we have the opportunity to bring in a lot of new players as well. So I feel confident in the game, and I've always believed that by focusing on making first and foremost making a game and an experience that is really compelling will drive you towards success, however that may be measured.
So with the, I don't want to spoil things too much, but with the ending to the original game, it very much left on a mark saying there's more stories to tell. Was there already a story in place? Did you already know what you wanted to tell, or did you just feel so good about it that you were like, yeah, we're going to make a sequel at some point?
Yeah, I think when we made Hellblade 1, we were an independent studio. You never take for granted that you're going to get the chance to continue a story. But we knew then that if we had the opportunity, then we would love to continue Senua's story. But like I say, with any game, you just never know when you're going to get that chance. So, fortunately for us, we have had the chance to go and tell the next part of Senua's story. And we've been, really excited about doing that and about the next chapter in her life. Like you say, she did say that there's more stories to tell, and that's what we're telling in Hellblade 2.
You mentioned that
you guys in the past have called yourselves independent AAA. So I'm just wondering, kind of like as a layman, what does that mean, and like what does that mean for how you guys make games?
Yeah, so independent AAA really was the sort of the banner under which we developed Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and the idea was really that we could make a game with AAA quality production values, a game that could, from a presentation perspective, from an audio perspective, sit alongside AAA games, but at the same time, it could be created with the creative risk-taking of independent development. And much is true in Hellblade 2. We have really gone to town in terms of our drive to immerse the player in Senua's world. But we're taking creative risks. We're doing different things. We're doing new things. So really it's about taking all of the really wonderful things about very high-end production values, but utilizing those to create a game that we hope leaves players thinking and feeling and reflecting, and ultimately on a journey that will mean something to them.
So what were you unable to do in the first game that you're now able to do in Hellblade 2?
Oh, a lot. So let's start off with performance capture. So on Hellblade 1, performance capture fed into our combat, and we shot that in our boardroom. So we're in a brand new studio now, which is incredible place to be. Hellblade 1, we shot all of our performance capture in a meeting room, essentially.
Wow.
And apart from our combat. So we tried to, but the ceiling was so low that if we swung a sword, it would hit the ceiling. So we had to go to an external performance capture stage. And we spent 2 days capturing all of our performance capture for combat. Now in our new building, we have our own performance capture stage downstairs, really amazing space. And for combat alone, we've spent 69 days capturing the combat for Hellblade 2. So on that stage, we can have multiple actors, we can have stunt performers, all of those types of things, which just really adds to the richness of the experience. I think one of the other big things in Hellblade 2 is that for the first time, Senua is experiencing her reality of the world with other people, with other characters, which has been a really interesting area to explore. In Hellblade 1, we could only realize one character in the way that we did with Senua. There was a lot of love and care and effort that went into realizing Senua, and we just couldn't make another character like that. Whereas in Hellblade 2, we now have a full cast of characters, and that's been really fantastic to explore how Senua's unique perception of the world interacts with the model of the world that other characters have.
I was going to ask about that because in replaying the first game over the weekend, it's very isolating, I think, for her. And I'm really interested to understand how this broader cast of characters is going to interact with her, given the time and the place where the game is set and the understanding of things like psychosis. So how does her relationship work with other characters? Sorry.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's been really interesting for us to delve into what it can be like to experience an unshared reality, which is really a way of describing what it can be like to experience psychosis, as Senua does. I think when you're isolated from people that we've spoken to, then there can be a great certainty around your experiences. Although your reality, the voices that you hear and the things you see are unshared, when you're on your own, they can have a really high degree of certainty. What we're exploring in Hellblade 2 is how Senua's very specific model of the world comes into contact with other people's. And you mentioned the time period. It's a time period where there's a great belief in myth and shared belief in myth and in the gods, and how there's meaning behind natural occurrences in the world. So what we see with Senua is how her version of reality clashes with that of others, at times reinforces other people's models of the world. And at a very practical level, we're exploring things like what it can be like to hear voices that other people can't hear whilst you're trying to have a conversation with another person. And that's something that we're excited for players to experience. Hellblade 1, as with Hellblade 2, encourage players to wear headphones to experience the binaural audio experience of the game, so you really hear these voices as if they're in the world around you. In Hellblade 2, we're now doing that, but when Senua is trying to have a conversation, while voices are providing additional commentary for her on that conversation, on the person that she's talking to. So it is a new step for Senua. Her experiences of psychosis are not static, like they aren't for many people, and the people that we've spoken to who live with psychosis. So we're seeing a progression in her experiences and how she lives with that and how she handles that day to day.
I definitely want to dive into gameplay and combat stuff. Was there a change to how you approached essentially the stuff you do in a video game, killing puzzles and stuff like that? You're telling a bigger story, you have more characters. So how did you approach what you gave the player to do in terms of like action and stuff? How do you find that balance this time around?
So everything is really about telling the story, and everything in Hellblade 2 is in service of the story. So we look at every tool that we have at our disposal as a storytelling device. In Hellblade 2, we've also really focused on making it as easy as possible for players to suspend their disbelief. That's the route that we believe will lead to players being able to immerse themselves in Senua's world. So with things like our environment, it's based on real locations, satellite data, photogrammetry data from Iceland. Our characters are digital doubles of real people. The costumes are scanned real world costumes. So when it comes to our action and things like our combat gameplay, we focused on the same things, which have been taking ground truth reference, which in this case has been performance capture from amazing stunt performers, and bringing that into the game with all of the emotional intent and all of the narrative that we want. The big change from Hellblade 1 to Hellblade 2 is that at the very beginning of this project, we asked ourselves the question of how do we make every fight in Hellblade 2 tell a story? How do we make it a narrative beat in its own right so that you're not here's a story bit and here's a combat bit and now here's another story bit. We all want it to be woven into each other. And of course, within that, we have melee combat in our blood here at Ninja Theory. It's part of our DNA. So we've got a really great team of people who have spent a long time, decades, working in action. So they know what makes combat feel good, feel like good gameplay. And we've kind of combined that, layered that together with very visceral, very emotive, real world performances. So that's really been the big focus, is how do we utilize gameplay as a way of making every step in the game meaningful, and making everything that you do about pushing forward Senua's story and Senua's journey.
Well, one of the things I was going to ask, because going back to the first game, I was, 2017 was a long time ago now. I was so surprised at just how pared back it is. And I mean that as a compliment, where it's like, I'm not constantly in menus. I'm not leveling up. I'm purely on this story. So what was that a conscious effort even back then and now to kind of keep it pared back and focus on the story? And like, did you ever meet resistance from anyone who was like, oh no, we should be putting more systems in, even if they're not in service to the story?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. We set ourselves principles on the project. One of the principles of Hellblade, from Hellblade 1 and Hellblade 2, is that there's no HUD. We have zero HUD in the game. And there's been plenty of times where we've said, but if we put HUD in here, it would make it easier. But we have that commitment to immersion, and that's really where it comes from, is by having zero HUD on the screen, then we're removing a layer that prevents players from really sinking themselves into the world, and really we want players to think about the journey, think about the story, and think about their own lives in relation to that story. And anything that I think has the potential to take you out of that, then we want to minimize that. So, and in terms of the experience itself, it is a conscious decision to make every step meaningful. It's a game that is cinematically presented, and it's choreographed in as much as we think about every step the player takes, and how do we make that part of that journey. Our ultimate aim and our mission as a studio is to use technology and techniques to push the craft of game making, but really in service of making people think and feel things. So when you focus on something like that so much, it does lead you down a path of questioning everything in terms of how meaningful it is in the context of that mission.
You mentioned the binaural audio earlier, and I guess I wanted to tie this into a broader question of how you are depicting the experience of psychosis. I know you've got a great working relationship with Paul Fletcher and other people who experience psychosis. What was the response like to Hellblade 1? Are there any stories from players that really resonated with you? What things did you really want to change for Hellblade 2?
By far the most incredible and valuable product of Hellblade 1 was that feedback that we received from players in relation to Senua's journey with her mental health experiences and with psychosis. We won a number of awards for Hellblade 1, which was incredible. Very fortunate to do so. But I think the one that stands out for me was the Royal College of Psychiatrists Award for Communicator of the Year. And to be recognized on that platform for having created an experience that helps to communicate to people what it can be like to live with psychosis, even in a small way, was fantastic. We heard from a lot of players that the game either helped them to understand their own experiences. In some cases, it encouraged people to open up, to talk about their experiences, to seek support for others. One that really will always stick in my mind was someone who told us that they lived with psychosis, and they overheard their own brother saying that he was embarrassed of her because of her experiences. And then she showed him Hellblade, and he apologized to her and said that he now understands what it's like. And that will always stick with me. I had the opportunity to meet her, and it was fantastic. So that really sits at the top of the mountain for us, is first and foremost, how do we make a game that is great to play? It's a compelling experience. It's something that people enjoy and they really love. If, as a Trojan horse, we can then, as a byproduct, help people to understand these things a little more, then fantastic. And I think games are unique in being able to do that. Games can offer people the opportunity to step into other people's shoes for a short while in a way that I think, film and literature and theatre are unable to do. So I think there's a responsibility there for games to push on the ability for games to deliver messages and stories in a really impactful way. So Hellblade 2, we hope for the same. I hope that people can understand a little bit more about what it can be like. And we've worked really closely again with Professor Paul Fletcher, as you mentioned, who is just the best, just the best guy. And also people from a local recovery college who have been so open and so honest in their experiences. And really, thankfully, because they share that belief that Paul has, that Hellblade can help people to understand. So we've worked really closely again on Hellblade 2 with things like what it can be like to hear voices and have a conversation with someone else at the same time. Really get into the detail of what is that really like? How does that really feel? And then try and translate that into the game. The other thing that I'll just mention on that as well is that in Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, we were exploring Senua's experiences of psychosis when they were at their most acute. She was coming to terms with them for the first time. In Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, there is a level of understanding and a different balance of power than there was before. So her experiences, I would say, are just as strong, but we're exploring some different areas like a feeling that people can have of being special, of being chosen in some way for a quest, and then the great responsibility that comes with that feeling of being the only person that can make the world right again.
Was it a hard sell, thinking back to when you were pitching the original game, was it a hard sell to academics like Paul to kind of say that, hey, video games can be this vehicle to teach people about psychosis? Because I mean, every time I've ever experienced an academic, not all of them, not tarring them all with the same brush, but it has kind of been that hard sell where games do have this reputation, I suppose. The tide is definitely changing now, but what was it like back then? And, after the success of the game, did you ever get to say, told you so to anyone?
No, we definitely didn't get to say, told you so, because I think we did a pretty good job. Like I'm proud of what we achieved. But it's psychosis is unique for everyone. It's everyone's experience of it can be different in the same way that I think all of our perceptions of reality are very different. So, we try and stay pretty grounded in what we achieved there. But I think when I first met Paul, and it's just over 10 years ago now that I first emailed Paul, he was instantly enthusiastic. In fact, I think my very first conversation with Paul was about Red Dead Redemption and how he had been playing Red Dead and how it had occurred to him how video games could be a very powerful tool in giving people a feeling of what it can be like to experience these things. And I remember him telling me at the time that in a video game, as a player, you go into a new world that you don't understand, and you figure out that world, you figure out the rules of that world so that you can effectively function within that world, which is very much what we all do in the real world. So Paul was someone who, I'm sure when I first emailed him, he was interested, and I think at the same time was unsure. But I think what Paul has always said to me was that our intentions have always been clear, and our intention has been to be very truthful about the subject. People often ask me about how to make these kind of collaborations with academia work. I think Paul is unique. Paul is incredible, but it's about having a shared passion around the potential. So on Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, I was anticipating people not being sure on what we were doing, but actually the response was overwhelmingly positive. And I hope, as you say, when people are perhaps worried about collaboration with academia or what academia might think, I think we have to overcome those fears, because I think really special things can happen when you bring together academia but also lived experience into games.
You mentioned video games being this vehicle to tell story about mental illness, and I would kind of be remiss at this point to not ask a little bit about Project Mara. I know the studio's attention is on Hellblade 2, but you did tease us with this other project. How is it coming along? Are we going to be expecting any updates on it soon?
Honestly, my focus is entirely on Hellblade 2. That's what I've been eating, drinking, whatever way you want to consume something, it's been Hellblade 2. So, that's entirely the focus. We've got about a week to go until we launch. So we're super focused on that. What comes after May the 21st, we'll see. But May the 21st is like that holiday you've been building up to, or Christmas Day, where it's like the thing beyond that is the thing beyond that. Mm-hmm. And everything leads up to May the 21st. So I'm just super focused on that and being together with the team on that day. That's what I'm excited about is, being together with the team. We're going to be here in the studio, enjoying the day, reading reviews, seeing what players think, and enjoying that day together. So that's the focus.
Yeah, and it must be... Oh, sorry, Jake. Go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it must be something that, it's obviously been a long time coming, especially, and also for fans, because you announced way back in 2019.
Yeah.
And I guess, would you kind of do that long, reveal to release again? What's been the pros and cons for you on the dev side?
Yeah, I don't think I would. I think there's a difference between how long the game has been in development and when the game was announced. I think I'm always interested in trying to help people to understand what it's like to develop a game, what happens, at the point in time where a game is announced. Quite often there isn't anything else. It's that's all there is, and there's a long road to release. So, we have been developing the game for a number of years. So, yeah, it's a long road, and fans have been with us the whole way. And when I sit there and I read comments from fans saying how excited they are about the game, that's the thing that makes me feel really proud. That's the word for me at the moment. I just feel so proud of our fans and of our team. Making games is really hard. Like, it's a really hard thing to do, and it's a really brave thing to do, to make art and to put it out there in the world and to say, this is me and this is us, and we've given this our best possible shot, and we hope that you love it, is a hard thing to do. So, I'm really proud, and I stand by everything that we do. And I'm sure come May the 21st, that kind of love and care that's gone into the game is going to show in the experience that people have.
Now, looking forward in anticipation of future projects, is Hellblade considered by you guys to be something of a franchise, in quotes? Is this something you want to pursue more, this world, these characters?
I suppose it's a franchise now in that there's two of them, right? I suppose that makes it a franchise. I don't know. Like, we're coming to the end of a journey with Hellblade 2. A journey that's been really wonderful for the team. And what comes in the future, we will see. But right now, we want to be present in the moment and really enjoy our launch. We're here trying to do cool stuff, and I think the game's really cool. And we're excited. I can't believe we're sitting here and it's 8 days until the game's going to be out there. We stare at this thing for so long and spend so much time trying to make it great, and to get it into the hands of people, it's like nothing else, really.
Well, we're really excited to check it out, and hopefully we can talk to you after it's out. But Dom, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, time to talk about another one of this episode's sponsors, Factor. Now, I do not have Factor, but you guys do have Factor.
We've got the X
Tell me
Factor.
I've got the It Factor.
Here we go. No one on the recording will see this. No one will see this but what actually happened there was that like Google Meets did some crazy bullshit where like fireworks appeared behind Jake.
It was Jubilee.
Like it was a full fireworks display. When he did this one, it went boom, fireworks. Lucy's literally crying.
But on my screen, the slowdown.
Yes, it was like the FPS dropped. It was a Zack Snyder slowdown moment. Oh man, Factor. That is the power of Factor.
It Factor.
So, getting back to it, tell us what is Factor?
Here's the deal. Especially because this time of year, right? It's the summer. It's time for like activities. You want to do stuff. Or also if you're people like us where you just work so much, it takes time to prepare, go grocery shopping, figuring out what you're going to make to feed yourself. And it's tough to keep up with sometimes. So Factor helps with that because they deliver fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved meals right to your doorstep. So you take these, they have a bunch of different stuff for essentially every diet, every preference, and they're real fresh, delicious meals that you put in the microwave 2 minutes and you're good to go, and you're eating and then you're done and you can go out and do your summer adventures or get back to work.
I was going to say summer adventures. I'm just going to go back to the couch, but no, I really like Factor just because, look at me, you know me, I'm a rat. I sit like a shrimp. But with Factor, I can eat shrimp and it's going to be fresh. That was terrible.
Nice, Liz.
No, but I think it's genuinely like, I could go to the store and get a frozen meal and it's not going to be good for me. And I know that. And I'm trying to be more mindful about things that I eat and what I put in my body. And so the fact that Factor is dietitian approved and there's a wide variety of stuff, I'm not just going to keep defaulting to mac and cheese, which is, the guilty pleasure, right?
Girl dinner.
Sure.
Girl dinner.
Boy dinner too. Thank you very much.
and the fact that it's so easy, and I just have to walk to my letterbox and go get it. It's fantastic. I love it.
And like a bunch of different add-ons. You can also customize how many show up every week, depending on your lifestyle, your schedule. So there's a ton of options and ways to eat good and feel good.
Yeah. So if you're interested, you can head to factormeals.com/FPS50 and use code FPS50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code FPS50 at factormeals.com/FPS50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Thank you very much to Factor for sponsoring this episode. All right, so unfortunately, due to time zones, I was not able to be at that interview. So how did it go? Because we're also recording this straight after, like a few hours after that happened. So I haven't actually had a chance to listen to the interview yet. So how was it?
Good.
It was good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was saying this to you guys before we started recording, but it's like, I just don't envy his position right now as being the Xbox game that is coming out almost immediately after all this stuff, because I know it's my job to ask him questions about how he's feeling in the position of the studio and everything, but it's like, it kind of feels shitty because they've been working on this game for so long and I wanted to hear about the game, and it's just like the decisions that are made by Xbox gaming or Microsoft gaming, whatever the hell, just like impacting the developers who are actually, and like to his point, he's just like, we just want to make exciting, cool stuff. And I'm just like, so I'm glad we got to ask him the questions about how things are at Xbox, but I'm really glad that we got the insight into the game, because I've been replaying Hellblade in preparation for Hellblade 2. And I'd forgotten just like how, for a 2017 game, like how well things were implemented and how a lot of stuff still holds up. And I'm really excited to see how they push it and where they go for the sequel, because it looks really cool.
Yeah. Also, just with the new game, I mean, even leading up to this interview, we've only seen so much of the game.
Yeah.
They've shown selective things, but we haven't gotten like massive deep dive breakdowns about the game or how it's going to play or what's going to happen. And even talking to him, we only could get so much because it seems like there's confidence almost in just like letting it speak for itself.
Right.
And just knowing the first game, I'm like, okay, cool. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
So
did you ask him about the marketing situation with this game?
We did.
With Hellblade 2? Okay, right. And the response was?
Wants to let the game like speak for itself.
Yeah. Right. Okay,
I mean,
fair
yeah.
enough.
That's what I'm saying. Where it's like we asked him, we had to ask him, but it's like you also.
Sure.
At the end of the day, like that game's his baby and Ninja Theory's baby. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do note the absence of marketing lately. Like, did they do a playable preview round for this? I'm trying to remember.
They did, but it was very limited.
Right. Okay. Cool. All right. Yep. And I haven't seen any kind of advertising really anywhere. I'm not sure.
I get it when I boot up my Xbox or Game Pass on PC. I saw someone say that they got an ad for it on GameSpot, so I think that is kind of eking out there now.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
I just don't think I don't think it's as been in your face as, what they did for Diablo, for example, right? Like, God, you couldn't fucking blink without seeing Diablo everywhere.
Sure.
None of this discourse will deter me. This has been like my most anticipated game for a while. So all the people that say I'm like a Sony pony, like, hey, come on, I'm on record here. All right, come on. Well, with that, I think let's jump into another user question. This is from Morgan, who asks, has a video game ever taught you something or inspired you to pursue an interest in the real world? For me, Final Fantasy 15 got me interested in cooking challenging dishes. Persona 5 got me interested in luxury coffee. Bloodborne inspired me to read all of H.P. Lovecraft. 2 Point Hospital got me into hospital admin. And on Ralph's recommendation, The Rift Breaker got me interested in sustainable energy with an emphasis on diversifying renewable energy sources. Respectfully, Morgan M. That's a great question.
That's such a great question.
That's a cool question.
God damn.
Yeah. When I played Outer Wilds, I got really into space stuff for a while.
Oh.
And I'd never learned anything about quantum mechanics. Mm-hmm. And so I did like one of these like short online courses in quantum mechanics as a result of it.
That's really cool. I love that.
Yeah. And do you guys know anything about quantum mechanics?
Ant-Man. I saw Ant-Man 3.
So no.
So that's no. I barely know anything about quantum mechanics other than what little weird course I did. But let me tell you, quantum mechanics are fucking insane. When you start learning even the smallest things about this world, you're like, hang on a second. That doesn't make any sense. That is impossible. And all the scientists are like, yep, we know. So it's 100% impossible. We know.
Is quantum mechanics quarks?
All that sort of shit. There's a billion things. There's a billion things. But basically, there are all these weird paradoxes about stuff being something, but also not being something at the same time.
Bioshock Infinite, baby.
Well, and it's really fascinating, and I really recommend checking it out because it will legitimately blow your mind. So yeah, that I think was a really fascinating journey for me to go on, and in a weird way, Outer Wilds as a game, so many of its mechanics are interesting spins, very gamified, very simplified versions of scientific principles that govern space, and so there are it's their own version of quantum mechanics, and obviously gravity is hugely important, and like orbit and so many things that they brought into that game just pulled straight from space. They've gamified space, ultimately, was what's fascinating about Outer Wilds. Which sounds like, oh well, yeah, sure, it's a space game, of course they did that, but when you actually understand the science that they're tapping into and how they've expressed it through gameplay elements, it's really fascinating. So yeah, Outer Wilds for me. That's it.
The Sims, I played so much of The Sims when I was younger.
Here we go.
But I would only create floor plans that were actually livable. Like, I would not do the classic Sims thing of like making a giant square box and like shoving everything in it. I really enjoy making spaces and like having a really nice, comfy home. And my friends have actually, they ask me to rearrange their furniture and like do floor plans for them. Like, I will fully just like get a piece of paper or something and I will draw out your floor plan and move your furniture around. So I've done that for a couple of people. We'll be doing it for someone else pretty soon.
Wait, was my living room okay? You saw my living room. Is it okay?
Your living room is great.
Thumbs up.
Oh, little thumbs up there. Thanks to my webcam. But your living room is really great because it has really good paths of travel from your kitchen into the hallway. It's very light, and I like the way that everything is positioned. Couch has good grounding in the middle of the room. The rug, great choice. I think it was great.
Thank you. Wow. Awesome. A full evaluation from Lucy James. I'm honored.
I love doing it. And then the other thing is that I really I enjoy history a lot. And I think playing games like when I was younger, I played like stuff like Caesar 3 and all that kind of stuff. And I really got into Romans for a while, and actually even playing the Forgotten City. No, not the Forgotten City.
Oh yeah.
Is the Forgotten City?
It is the Forgotten City, yeah.
In my head, I mixed it up with the Flooded City, and I was like, that's a different thing.
Okay.
But the Forgotten City kind of reignited my love for Romans, and I wanted to give a shout out to the Fall of Civilizations podcast, which I've definitely shouted out on this podcast before. But he just released a book, and it's not coming out in America until the end of July. So I'm having to send it to Jordan Midler from VGC to bring it to Summer Game Fest so that I can read my book about history. And my camera won't stop doing thumbs up. So goodbye.
Love it.
Jake, what about you?
For me, so first thing off the bat, I went to Iceland because of Death Stranding.
Right.
Just the type of geography there was like heavily influenced by Iceland. And then I got into Iceland and like learned all about Iceland and then decided to go. And very happy I did, because it is a beautiful country and it is obviously a lot more than just a Hideo Kojima game of a guy running around with a box. So I'm grateful for that. And then the rest of it, I guess, is kind of like you guys, where it's like educational more than anything. This sounds kind of like, I don't know, like the state of the education system, but like the original Metal Gear Solid kind of for a while served as like my base point for knowing about things and then pursuing things that I just never really knew too much about, like the Cold War, the military industrial complex, nuclear proliferation, like stuff like that. Didn't really have any grasp on any of that. And Metal Gear kind of served as that basis point. And then I was like, oh, okay. And sought out knowledge here and there with stuff like that. And then the other weirder one is probably SimCity, but then more like City Skylines and stuff like that. Yeah. Just becoming obsessed with those, and then getting a little interested in civil planning, civil engineering, and architecture, and like different architectural styles. But mostly just kind of just getting mad at how cities are planned and built in the United States and getting frustrated. Just kind of like, basically I just use City Skylines to be a launch point for learning how to be a snob about civil engineering and be annoying about it. But hey, you know.
Hey, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Next up, we're just going to continue to talk to people who make games. We're talking to Airship Syndicate folks, specifically Ryan Stefanelli and Joe Mads, about Wayfinder. Wayfinder launched. There was a whole interesting thing with that, and now it's coming back. And I think this is a really interesting conversation, a perspective from a studio and a candid nature of some studio folks that you don't usually hear. So let's jump into that now. Hey guys, so this is going to be a really interesting conversation. I want to get to how you got to where you are. Wayfinder was kind of a canceled live service game in the headlines, but now you're re-emerging. So what exactly did you announce? Ryan, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, canceled in a sense. It's weird when a game is canceled, but it's still going and still available. It was tough in the moment to have that happen, and really, I guess, to give a real brief backstory to what led to the decision that may be a surprise to some is after DE decided to terminate the agreement, our first thought was, let's go out and find another similar partner that wants to continue the game as a live service title, the game that had been built for years to be. And I will say that when we were pitching the game over 4 years ago, we didn't necessarily, we weren't pitching a free-to-play game. We felt like when we started talking with DE that it could be a potential fit for one and that they would be the right partner given their success with Warframe. So we sort of pivoted it towards being free-to-play. It was always intended to be online, but not necessarily free-to-play. Anyway, after DE moved on, so to speak, we started talking to other potential service-based partners to keep it a live service game, to keep it free to play, basically what it already was. And through a combination of the game's rocky launch, but also just the state of the industry in general, it became clear over the course of the following months that maybe wasn't in the cards. So we were left with really one reality, which is that the game was going to just be shut down. And like so many service-based games before it, just kind of be lost forever. And that just felt ridiculous, frankly, both for the players who had paid money for the game, but also for all of our teammates and the people over the years who had put a lot of themselves into the game. And so we started thinking about how could we keep this around forever? Could we even? Was it possible with the months that we had left of our own money to convert this to something that could live forever? And it turned out after it was really a multi-weeks long marathon planning session, we came up with the plan to just strip out the parts of the game that were struggling the most, those being the service, the parts of the game that were monetized, and just convert it into a kick-ass multiplayer, truly loot-based co-op action adventure. And so we have Wayfinder, what we're calling this the Echoes update. So basically, Wayfinder Echoes was born from that. And so it's going to reemerge as an online, buy it once, get everything, play forever, co-op action game. And as a part of that, everything that was sold through Storefront, those MTX, which we know everybody loves right now, there is no more store. All of it is in the game and earnable, but it's more than just cosmetic like it was when it was in the store. Now it's all loot. So all the weapons have stats. They drop through the course of play as loot. All of the armor that was previously cosmetic, it has stats. It's collectible. They're all a part of a set, and you unlock the characters as you play the game. They're all included, all for one price. So it's just a kick-ass, pay once, play forever action game.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's a pretty massive pivot. And I can't really think of another game that has done this. Am I wrong about that? Is there anything you can think of where they're like,
it was tough for us to find someone who has, actually. We were pretty concerned about it as well at first. We're like, has anyone done this before?
Yeah.
Did you find anyone? I can't remember. Did you think of anyone that's done it?
I think we found some examples that were similar-ish, but not really, certainly not on the scale of Wayfinder that we could find. No, and we didn't know if that was going to help us or hurt us in one way. It's like, is there a reason that
sometimes
nobody else has done
it's good not having a choice because we just,
no rule book.
This is literally the only thing that we can do with it at this point. So maybe we'll be trendsetters. I don't know.
Yeah, and when we started talking, first of all with the programming team, because that's where you got to go first, right? a lot of work, and it was certainly ambitious. And we honestly didn't start the work on this until February, because from when was it, October, November, that the news broke from Digital Extremes, through February, we were still pursuing this with publishers as a free-to-play game. And it was in February that we were like, okay, this isn't working. Like, what are we going to do? And we first threw the idea out there, and everybody kind of looked around the room like, we can't really do that, right? Like, we can't just strip the service out, and how the hell are we going to convert everything to loot? Like, that's so much work. There's so much data. We figured it out. I mean, there are some, necessary evils that come with it. Like, players are all going to be starting the game over, right? Because there's no way to take that online data to an offline game, because everything about the player data is different. The characters and the way they're unlocked is different. The armor sets are all loot. The weapons are all loot. Everything about the game is different. So that on the surface seems like a negative, but it's also positive, because it is a game worth replaying now. It's a very different experience because of the way all the stuff is unlocked. And that's to say nothing, and that's something that we'll be going into in future deep dives, like what about the gameplay has changed? What about the UI has changed? There's a lot of stuff that's new to the game as well. Players are going to see 2 brand new open world zones to explore, similar to the one big one that we had in the game. A lot of just an incredible number of UI improvements and updates. So there's a lot about the game itself that's better, aside from just the fact that it's, not full of microtransactions. There's a lot about the game that from top to bottom has changed. It's going to look, probably outside of the characters and the combat, which are fundamentally very similar. The wrapper, the style, the presentation, everything about it is very new.
Yeah. I mean, I really want to dig into that. But first, I want to just go back a little bit, because I'd really like to understand a little bit more about that relationship with DE and how that sort of chapter went down from, like striking that partnership and like, roles, responsibilities within that. I'm guessing it was kind of like you guys make a game and then they market and publish it and whatever else, and infrastructure. But then obviously into the announcement of DE shuttering their publishing label and the closure of that. I'm kind of just interested to unpack that. So was it the case that you guys had the job of making the game and DE would assume all responsibility for marketing and publishing and server infrastructure? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's generally correct. They definitely did the lion's share of the marketing, all the publishing work, all the relationships with the first parties, the stuff you'd expect a traditional publisher to do. On the service-based side, there were roles and responsibilities on both sides. Our tech director would be the best one to answer that. But we both had a hand in, I think they were doing logging queue, a lot of the login stuff. We did database. We did a lot of, everybody played a role.
Yeah, right.
But it was outside of that, it was pretty much we made the game and they did the publisher stuff. A lot of feedback, a lot of input on the monetization scheme, that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, which is when we signed with them, the whole idea was we don't know free to play. They do. If we want to do a service-based game, we will partner with somebody that can plug those skill set gaps, right? Because we wouldn't have tried it on our own, because we wouldn't have known what the hell we were doing. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think, sorry.
I was just going to say, a lot of the systems and the design of the game was based on a lot of the learnings from Warframe, which, again, it was a huge hit. So we thought, let's learn from these guys. They steered us away from a lot of like pitfalls and I don't think we would have had the confidence to even attempt free to play, like Ryan said, without a partner like DE. Yep. So it was definitely very valuable when it was a free-to-play game. Yeah,
sure. So the server stuff, though, has always struck me as passing strange, because it obviously very rocky in terms of server performance in that launch window and immediately after. But at the same time, DE had over nearly a decade of experience in managing a very large-scale live service, server-dependent game. So how did that happen exactly? What exactly went wrong there? Like, what was the deal?
I think so Warframe is a peer-to-peer game, and that's not necessarily something that people wouldn't do that today. So they made the correct decision, we did together, that it wouldn't be a peer-to-peer game. So we couldn't use Warframe's tech, right? So to the extent that Warframe had proven server tech, probably wouldn't have made sense for Wayfinder. I don't know, maybe we could have made it work. But all the back-end tech was brand new. It was a platform that DE was developing in-house, potentially to serve more than just Wayfinder if they were to publish more than just our game. And through a series of events, I think the game probably, well, definitely, as we saw, needed some more beta testing, just needed more time with more players in, probably a larger scale open beta, stuff like that to expose some of the flaws that we found on launch day. And had we done that, we probably could have avoided some of them, but it was just new. It was new tech. It was new tech, and it needed more time. It's kind of a classic combination of problems.
Sure. So that rocky launch happened, and obviously a lot of that was about server stuff, and I think as well there was some technical issues within the game itself and general content teething issues that come with any early access, which is fairly natural because that's the point of early access for sure. But then sort of fast forward a little bit, and then DE rather suddenly announced that they're shuttering their publishing label and that, support for the game would end. So tell us about that moment and exactly how that transpired in terms of, you guys receiving that information and the studio's reaction to that. Like, how did that go down?
Yeah, that was fun. So we actually...
I wasn't even here that day. I was like driving to Dallas, and you called me and were like, "Hey."
We knew something was up when we saw their entire external projects team, which is the publishing group within DE that was who we talked to. We really didn't talk to the Warframe team much, or the guys who had worked on Warframe. We didn't talk to them much. We talked to this team they had established to manage their published projects. When all of them just went silent, well, all of them got disconnected from Slack at the exact same time. And we saw one or two of them had been, which, means obviously that the people are let go, because it's the new classic way of finding out someone's been fired is it just says deactivated in Slack. And when we saw it was that entire group, I knew what was happening, because if it had just been one or two people, you think, they're, reorganizing, but they also cut the entire back end team that was doing the back end stuff on their side, which was like 8 to 10 people, all gone. And you see that and you're like, well, obviously they're not planning to keep the service running if the people who have to run it are gone. So at that point I knew, and quickly we got on a call with them. And obviously I understood what I was about to hear when we got on the call with them. It's still kind of shocking. And when we got off the call, I thought, all right, I got to think about how we're going to tell the team, which we were going to tell them that day. But when you hear that as someone who runs a studio, your first thought is, okay, let's plan, let's be ready to think about how we're going to approach this with the team. And so we were thinking about it when I think it was Polygon or someone like that broke the news to the team for me that the game had been canceled and that DE was dropping as a publisher. So even though I knew it, the team found out before I could tell them because the press got a hold of it first. So the rest of the team heard through links shared in Slack, and then I got to send out a message to the team like, well, I guess we should talk. So then we got together and did an all hands meeting and sort of talked about what it meant, but also about how, the game was coming to Airship. We didn't know how long it would take. We didn't know what it would look like once it got to us. But the team held together. They believed in the game. I mean, there was a lot that, we took responsibility for during the early access launch. I think one of the hardest parts about it, and even today, one of the hardest things for us to sort of reconcile as a team is like making good with players, because that launch, it was, shit, right? It was terrible. And you don't want that to be the last thing players remember about you or your project. And so we spent a lot of time, even during launch, while the game was still live, trying to make good to players, fix issues. We fixed a ton of issues. We did make goods, trying to give currency, characters, tried to improve the game. And so when we thought that the game entirely may disappear, that was like a gutting feeling. So I'm glad that we're where we are today, which is with a better version of the game that is going to live forever. So the people who did buy it, they're gonna have something that they can log in and play with friends. Well, not log in anymore, but they can play with friends forever. So it took a while to get here, but the emotional roller coaster was rough. But the team never really seemed to lose faith in the core of the game, which was cool.
So the rights stuff, by the way, that is always a question mark that I have with these sorts of things happen. Not that this sort of exact situation is common, but the rights, like, did D own the rights and did they just kind of gift them to you, or did you guys have to like buy them back? And like, was that a gamble that you made based upon X, Y, and Z? Like, what exactly was the deal with those rights?
Yeah, I mean, there's some aspects of the deal we can't get into, but the main thing was that Airship always owned the IP, but they had, certain rights to it as the publisher, and there was just a sort of lengthy negotiation period to figure out exactly, because the devil is always in the details. Stuff that is important when you're talking to lawyers, and then you get the thing signed and it's sitting on a shelf and it's not necessarily something you're thinking about anymore. But in the end, I think it was a fair agreement, and we're able to move on cleanly with the game. And it left us with a lot of power to make the right decision for the game, which was good. We could have gone to another publisher. It would have been difficult because there would have been sort of a love triangle between the three of us. But that decision was really made for us just because there's not a lot of signing going on in the industry right now. There's more cutting going on than spending. So the silver lining is that it'll be the first time we finally get to self-publish something, which is something all devs want to do. Not necessarily in this circumstance, but here we go.
So when you guys do finally decide, okay, like, let's do this, let's self-publish, for the layman, what does that mean? But like, where do you start?
It used to mean a lot more, 10, 15, 20 years ago, like when we did Darksiders 1, publishing a game meant putting it in boxes, getting discs minted, distribution, buying store shelf, buying shelf space in stores. That was a lot of work. You could not do it without a publisher. Really now, even the marketing effort was different, right? Because you were trying to get magazine space or TV spends, or we had a billboard for Darksiders 2, which was kind of cool actually. And now it's very different. Publisher means go through the steps necessary to put the game on Steam. Congrats, you're a publisher. You just published a game. Wow. And marketing is talking to you guys. It's getting content creators to buy into the game and talk about it. And like our community guys do, living in Discord with a pretty big community in Wayfinder's case, talking to the community. So it's a lot more feasible for a developer to be a publisher as well. It's just hard to get noticed. That's today's big problem.
So definitely want to talk a little bit more detail about the game itself and what's coming to it and the changes that we can expect and the future of the game. But just before I pivot to that, I want to just have a brief discussion about like that moment where you were still trying to get the game supported by another live service publisher and the kind of discussions that you were having around that. Because we hear about this all the time. Like we're hearing about how tight the funding environment is, and we're seeing all the time studios being closed and layoff, whatever else. What are those discussions like when you're actually sitting across the table and like what are you hearing when you hear the no? You know what I mean? Like what are these investors saying to you with regards to why they're not being willing to spend money in this current climate? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, you don't often hear no. You hear maybe, and then the radio silence is your no.
Interesting.
I mean, sometimes you hear no.
I think one big difference was that we didn't even have that many meetings. Like we didn't even have interested parties that we even had that conversation with. I mean, we tried everyone, and we work with an agency, and we're pretty much have access to everyone. But it was just the same story. It's like no one's really looking, not for something of this size. I mean, like the operating costs of a service game are astronomical, and a lot of times you got to weather the storm. Sometimes it takes a couple years before games like these find their footings, and the really huge ones do take years and years in early access and just evolving over time. And it's hard to find someone that has that much money and that level of commitment where they're like, we're gonna weather those tough years, not just months. So it definitely wasn't something that we could do, and there weren't really any, like we maybe had a couple of like serious conversations that sort of fizzled out. But
yeah, and I think it's a combination too of when you're in this climate where money is tight, it looks like, you know, user behavior is changing and they're not spending as much money buying as many games. It becomes about, for publishers, and not just publishers but investors, it's like risk mitigation. Like, what can you do to reduce the risk? And Wayfinder was a ton of risk because it came out, it's sitting at, you know, mixed on Steam, which is a big improvement from overwhelmingly negative like it was in the first, you know, couple of days when people couldn't log in. But between the risk mitigation, its rocky launch, which put a cloud over it, and just generally people not really spending a lot of money. Also, I think, even though it isn't really said out loud, there's clearly an understanding that people kind of want to move away. Like, players don't necessarily want free-to-play games the way they did. I think there was some statistic I saw that said, you know, the top 5, 6, 7 earning free-to-play games have all been out for over 5 years. You know, there's nothing new in this space today. Is something that people want to take a risk on. And honestly, as we were having these conversations, once we believed internally that we had a path to just escaping free-to-play entirely, because for a while when we first proposed this internal idea, like, let's just make it a cool co-op online, just a co-op action game, one price. We were still entertaining both ideas, but the more we in February started the work on stripping the service out, making real loot, you know, everything that the game is today, and we were still having some conversations about the free-to-play version. We were secretly hoping that, I don't want to say secretly hoping that they wouldn't work out, but everybody internally, I mean, certainly the studio, you can imagine how excited our devs were to be working on a premium game again.
Yeah, right.
It completely changed the teams, because it was 4 years of rough development.
Yeah.
Then the launch, I mean, you talk about taking the wind out of your sails. Nobody really, like, morale stayed very respectably high given the situation. But when we made this premium shift, you could sense there was it re-energized everyone because they felt like they were making a better game. Not just a better game, but devs care about the players. And so this idea that you're making a game that players were going to be more excited, they're just going to respect the game more because of the stigma that comes with service games today in particular. It really made everybody was really happy to be doing it.
Yeah. How big is the team, by the way?
Team is 80-ish now.
80-ish. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
So, Joe, we talked about like the business stuff and like, you know, changing the business model and gutting some things. But from the creative angle, how does that go down? Did you guys like go back to the drawing board? Are you like rewriting the world? Is it like a director's cut edit or something? Like, how do you even approach that creatively?
Yeah, I think so. Like, narratively, a lot of it is we just stitched it up as best we could. We didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah, that was fun. There was the moment
resources to like.
Oh shit! How are we going to put an ending into the game? How does that work?
Yeah, so we did our best there, and then, you know, gameplay wise, there was a lot of going back to the drawing board, adding stats to weapons and stuff like that. Is like, you know, luckily, like Steve, the game director, is you know, sort of he's done systems for our past few games already, and like he's super excited to do stuff like that. So I think everyone just worked as quickly as we could to get. And I will say the one side benefit of the just the service beginnings of the game, we made so much stuff for, like, you know, MTX, and like just we knew that we were going to have to drop stuff over a long period of time. And so, like, once all that stuff got in the game, it was cool because there's like so much loot. Every chest you open has meaningful stuff in it. It's not just crafting resources, and it made each run of the dungeons more fun. And I really hope people play like as many of the Wayfinders as they can, because each one of them has so much unique like armor and weapons and
There's
stuff.
a lot of stuff
crazy.
in the game.
So yeah, it was definitely a huge undertaking. I'm kind of shocked that it happened so quickly, to be honest.
Yeah, I think one of the things we'd like to convey too is it's cool that it's a premium game now, right? It's one price and you get everything. If we had built the game with that in mind over the past 4 years, it wouldn't be what it is today, right? Like, there is some necessity is the mother of invention, and there is some, I guess, compromise, because the team only had a limited runway to make this change. And so let's just call it unique, the way you unlock the characters and the weapons. And there was so much armor, there was so much stuff that was cosmetic that became loot, so many housing things that were meant to be sold on the store. And we're like, well, we got to give them the players somehow. So, I mean, it's like a loot shower to some degree, because there's a lot of stuff, which is cool. And it's all jammed in. And the game is going to stay in early access when it first releases. And we're hoping that it's going to leave early access by the end of this year once we've got all the platforms. So PlayStation, which obviously was already on PlayStation, and then Xbox. Eventually, we had planned to do on Xbox, planned to release it on Xbox even as a live game. We're still going to try and do Xbox. And around the time we release that, we'll be putting in the last of the major content. And then we'll leave early access. But that should help us smooth out during early access some of the balance issues. Maybe it's with loot delivery, maybe it's with some spiky moments where progression or things are a little too grindy. During early access, we're going to look at player feedback and try and smooth some of those edges out and just wrap the game up as best we can story-wise, which is not easy. Wasn't easy. It was meant to go on for years, right?
Yeah, it's definitely going to have a weirdly MMO-light feel, even though you're just playing with a small party or alone. It's still the pacing feels more MMO-like, which, is cool. Like, plenty of decent sized world to explore, cool dungeons.
But because it was built as a service game, one nice thing is that it was already set up to support drop in, drop out co-op. And you play as your character, you pick up stuff, you take that stuff back to your save game. So it's really player friendly that way.
Sure. Yeah, right. So am I right in assuming that there's not going to be any further updates to this game post launch, or are you leaving the door open to that depending on the reception the game gets after it goes 1.0?
Yeah, absolutely leaving the door open to that. So when the game launches, when it relaunches, when the Echoes update comes out in June, that won't be the last update of the game. We will be doing patches, we'll be fixing things, and we have at least one more major content patch coming before the game leaves early access, or maybe right when it does, that will add an entire new explorable overworld area, new dungeons, at least one new character, new weapons. So there's a lot that's still coming before the game leaves early access. And so it's going to be coming out at $24.99 into early access. And the price will be going up when it leaves early access after we've added all that stuff in.
Yeah, right. Cool. And so, okay, so the door is open for future content on the Wayfinders, obviously, but at the same time, I'm sure you've got, you're thinking about the future for the studio and what comes next. So what is that thinking going on right now? Like, is that a problem for tomorrow, or is that like, no, we're absolutely very focused on that right now? Like, how are you approaching all of that?
Yeah, it's a problem for today and tomorrow. So we already have a new project in development, one that we're taking on the road and pitching. We're talking to publishers and investors about it. Depending on how Wayfinder does, potentially even, hopefully, again, continuing our streak now, which is one as a publisher. But yes, it's tough because the landscape's not great out there, right? And having a game canceled doesn't leave you in a great financial position. But as work on Wayfinders winding down, we're starting some of our own games again. Obviously, the not ones we can talk about, but yeah, we're definitely thinking about the future. Not just one game, potentially going back to being a multi-project studio like we were for a while when we had both Darksiders Genesis and Ruin King going at the same time. Games of that size, premium titles, like we have obviously had success doing those. So, and we enjoyed it. It was fun doing. It's fun. We'll have shipped 4 titles in 10 years with Wayfinder releasing, and we'd like to keep that like cadence going.
Yeah,
feels good.
That's a great track record. Yeah. I mean, Wayfinder's had obviously share of problems for sure, but I mean that track record behind you with the other titles you've put out has been extremely strong, and I think it's great that you guys are continuing on. Sorry, Joe, you're going to say something.
Oh, I just strategically, I think it's scary to put all your eggs in one basket too. It's like,
we learned that the
one time we did that, it didn't really work out that great. And all the stories you see like every day of studios shutting down and people getting laid off and whatever, it definitely is scary. So for us, I think we'd feel more comfortable working on smaller games and more than one, and having them staggered like we have before. It just makes more sense than ever now.
It is weird because we learned so much working on Wayfinder that to a degree it feels almost like a shame to have some service-based game experience and to not utilize it. But whatever. We're happy to go back to the games we know we can do well. Which Wayfinder Echoes really is that. It's that type of game again.
Any chance you guys might revisit Darksiders?
Well, that's not up to us. That's if we still own that IP, you bet we would.
Would you be interested in doing that, do you think, if the opportunity ever presented itself?
We'd definitely be open to that, yeah.
I think we would.
Yeah. I mean, Darksiders Genesis was very much an airship way of going about a Darksiders game. I was glad we did it too, because we got through 2 titles at Vigil, and we were actually tired of Darksiders ourselves. We'd started working on another game internally when THQ went bankrupt. And so it felt like a painful way to end our time on Darksiders, and we didn't think we'd be working on another one, so we were excited to get to do Genesis. That was really cool. I'd work on another Darksiders game, yeah.
For sure.
Even though it's not ours, it still feels like, I think all of us who were part of the founding crew at Vigil still feel some love-based ownership of Darksiders, but it's in good hands now with the Gunfire guys. So
yeah, nice.
All right, well, with that, Ryan, Joe, thank you very much for your time, and good luck with Wayfinder, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. We appreciate it. It's great talking to you guys.
So you guys actually got onto Incogni before I did.
Yes, we did.
Because you guys got access to it before I got access to it, like a week earlier or something. And you were telling me about it, and I was like, oh, okay, that sounds kind of interesting. But then I actually started using it myself, and I'm like, damn, this is actually really great. So what it is basically your data is everywhere, all over the internet. And you actually think you might like, oh, I signed up to some thing one time, and you're like, well, I know they've got my data, but that thing that you signed up to, they gave your data like fucking everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's all over the internet at this point. And so and there's no way for you to really know that, because you don't even know who gets hold of your data in the end,
because
right?
so many do. There's so many out there that even if, so essentially you have the right to go out and request like, hey, can you take my stuff down, please? But there are so many out there that like you can't physically handle it yourself. So that's where Incogni as a service is useful.
Yeah. So you basically sign up to it and like give it permissions, and it will then go out and look for where your personal data is. And when it finds it, it then issues like these automated takedown requests, and that just starts the process. And so you never need to worry about any of it in terms of like doing things or filling in forms or responding to emails or whatever. Like, it literally just does it all for you. And every few weeks you get a new progress report talking about how many places your data has been taken down from. And I think right now the latest report I got was like 60 places that had my data.
150 plus.
Yeah.
That is insane. Yeah. It's like, I've never even, and again, you look at the list of these places that have all your data and you've never heard of any of them, because they're just random generic names of places, of companies, of whatever. But yeah, it's all coming down now. And like, I don't know if I can say it. Look, I've been actually quite active in trying to like reduce my subscriptions to like random newsletters and bullshit over time, like the last little while. But I've definitely noticed in general less spam coming into my email inbox over the last few months, for sure. Like, that's not an exaggeration. Again, I know I've been cleaning it out as well and unsubscribing to things and blocking things or whatever. But in general, just like random unsolicited shit just rocking up, I've definitely noticed a reduction in that, which has been great. So yeah, it's really good. I really do recommend it.
It is set it and forget it, basically, because it's like you just put in essentially your name and that you would like that information taken down, and then you sit back and watch it happen. It has a pretty intuitive, easy to look at dashboard that gives you updates and like, the progress or status of these requests. And it's nice because you get to like sit back with a cup of tea and just look at all that stuff go down.
Yeah, and also if it thinks it's found a record, but it's not sure if it's you or not, it kind of says, hey, we found this, that might be you. Quickly go in. I check it every time it comes through, every couple of weeks or so. It obviously, as more requests have gone through, that's less and less because it knows it's me. And I'm just like, yeah, that's me. That's not me. That's me. And it just goes and does those takedowns. And it is such a weird it's a relief, I guess, because you don't realize how much of your personal data is out there, and just having this set it and forget it is great.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're interested, we've got a deal for our users. Head to incogni.com, throw the code FRIENDSPERSECOND in there, and snag an exclusive 60% off. It's time to reclaim your online space with Incogni. Thank you to them for sponsoring the video.
All right, next up, what the hell have we been playing? Ralph, I would love to know about Homeworld 3 because I know very little about these games. I know this one has been a long time coming. Is it worth the wait?
20 years since the last one. No, that's not true. Not quite true. They had Deserts of Carrick a few years ago, and they had the remasters before that. Homeworld 1 and 2 remasters. But this is the first numbered Homeworld in 21 years.
Mamma mia.
You guys never played Homeworld back in the day?
Never did.
Damn, you guys missed out.
Googling.
You guys played other RTS. You play other RTS? You play like your Warcraft, your Starcraft?
Yeah, a little bit.
I dabbled with Starcraft, and I was like, oh, this is not how my brain works.
Interesting. Yeah, right. I mean, I guess I came up in an era where RTS is just what everyone played. Like it's
every brand, every franchise had one too.
Everyone was doing it. There was so many of them, and they were so good. They really were fantastic games, and there was so much innovation in that genre in such a short space of time. But yeah, Homeworld was always quite different because it happens in 3D space, and that sounds like a small thing, but it's a massive deal when it comes to RTS games always happen on a flat plane.
Yeah.
But the minute that you then need to send your orders, send your units out in one direction across multiple planes, it gets pretty crazy because you've kind of there's a very interesting thing where you kind of click a button and then you click again. You click to put distance, how far they'll move, and then you click again to move up or down, and then that can reposition them dynamically within 3D space. And that just makes things feel really sick. You just feel like some fucking awesome space fleet commander.
I immediately see the appeal. You just described that, and I was like, oh, okay. Cool.
Yes. And battles would happen out in deep space, but they'd also happen in asteroid fields and whatever else. But it also had this fantastic vibe where it was very cold and kind of the radio chatter. Because you know how in a lot of other RTS games, all the voice barks were very much
Space.
Just really big sounds and personality. We need to pack as much personality into this unit as possible with this tiny little bark, right? Whereas Homeworld was the exact opposite of that, where we want everyone to sound like they're disinterested. And
that's cool.
And kind of a bit bored.
That's cool.
That's the vibe they're going for with all the radio chatter. And yes, the soundscape also had this kind of muted quality. The things had a thud almost, a muted thud when a torpedo would strike, because you're in space and there's actually no sound in space, but you have to have some sound. So the way they compensate for that is by kind of dulling the sound.
I learned about this in Ant-Man 3. There's no sound in the quantum realm or whatever.
That's right. And so Homeworld really special games. And so Blackbird Interactive, the guys who recently just released Minecraft Legends, they have been working on Homeworld 3 for a long time. It was initially a Kickstarter thing along with Gearbox. We're working on it for, I don't know, 7 years ish now. And it's out. It is pretty good. It's the campaign not great, sadly. The story stuff, they tried some new stuff with the story, and it's bad. It's bad. It's definitely bad. It's much more personal in a way that's not particularly interesting. Again, Homeworld is very cold, and this personal drama that they've infused, very emotional and very it's about self-doubt and all these sort of things. And you're I don't really love this vibe for Homeworld. It doesn't really fit. They spent a lot of money on these cutscenes, by the way. If you happen to see it, there are these really impressive CG cutscenes, which a lot of games don't do CG cutscenes these days, right? Very few. So it's kind of nice to see that. But the script underneath that is really bad. So that's a bummer. The campaign is very interesting in its design because it gives you a lot of scenarios. So at one point, you're in the middle of an asteroid field. Imagine it's like Crossy Road, but with a fleet of spaceships.
Hell yeah.
And instead of cars, it's asteroids just flying across. And you need to move your slow-ass fleet across this asteroid belt.
Right.
And there is no way to avoid all asteroids, by the way. And at some point, you just see a giant asteroid coming at your fleet of ships, and you know it is going to collect every single one of your fighters, and it's just going to clean them all up, right? That is a cool moment when that happens. There are other missions where you need to take like a squadron of fighters on a suicide mission because they're like separate from the main fleet. They have to destroy some like comms tower or something. And so you send them on this really crazy suicide mission. Just, how long can you make all of your units last? Will the last fighter be enough to take down the last target? And if it is, great, So a lot of effort has gone into the scenario design for missions. The challenge, though, is that I played it on normal mode, on normal difficulty, which I believe, and this is actually an interesting question. Do you guys think that normal difficulty should be like a little bit hard, not too hard? It should just be like the default difficulty for a video game? Or do you see it as easy mode these days? Because I legitimately hear from so many people that are like, nah, man, normal mode these days, if you play video games, normal mode is the easy mode. You must play all your games on hard. I'm like, what? No, that's hard mode. Yeah. That's why it has the word hard in it, because it's hard.
I look at normal mode as the like, oh, this is what the developers are setting as the main experience, with a balance between having fun and facing some challenge, but reasonably overcoming them. And then if you like it enough, you play it again on hard.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Totally agree with that.
Go on. No, I was gonna say the only games that I would, if I replay them, I default to playing on a harder difficulty, either hardcore or like the hard one, or Insanity, is Mass Effect. But that's only because I think Mass Effect 2 in particular becomes a fundamentally completely different game. And
and there are
exceptions. Way more tactical. Definitely. It's way more fun for me. But I think that's only because I played those games a disgusting amount of times.
So much. Sure. Yeah, and I think, and so I feel like that's exactly how it should be. But also I think we need to arrive at kind of a general shared lexicon for what those terms mean, right? Because otherwise you've got people stepping into because I really stepped into Homeworld being like, well, I'm going to play it on normal difficulty because I expect a little bit of challenge. But the truth is the normal difficulty is so brain dead easy that it actually sucked a lot of fun out of the game for me, right? And I'm like, oh man, I wish I played this on hard. But by that point, I'd already finished it on Thingo. So I have to play it all over again on hard. I wasn't feeling that at that point. And, so I do like 1 or 2 missions on hard just to test it out, to see, okay, like, yeah, this is definitely better for sure. I wish I did this from the start, So yeah, unless we can arrive at that shared definition of what that broadly means, you're always going to have situations where people jump into the normal mode and it's way too easy, or it's never really too difficult. I don't think. I've never encountered a situation where I've said to the average person, oh no, don't play it on normal, it's too hard, you should play it on the easy mode instead. That doesn't happen. But I think it quite often happens that the normal mode is undertuned. And it's definitely the case here. So some of that enjoyment was sucked out because of that. But there's also a new game mode in Homeworld 3 called War Games, which is like a roguelike. And it's really clever because, every time you hit the button, you're on a new map, new objective, like new enemies type spawn, and you actually have to complete a sequence of objectives. And each time you do that, you get like some perks for your fleet. And so, you might get one perk that makes your interceptors like have better range, or for example. And then the next perk you unlock is your interceptors have a better, like more damage. So you could kind of then say like, oh, my interceptors are really strong on this run. I'm going to build more interceptors and I'm going to deprioritize building bombers, for example. Cool. And so it creates a lot of diversity in your fleet composition, which is great.
That's awesome.
It's really great because most RTS games, you have like a build order and you're like, I need to build to this unit because this unit is the best type of unit. And here it's like, well, no, there is no best type of unit within the categories because it depends on which perks you got along the way. And so the same way that Hades randomly throws stuff at you and you need to, or maybe I'm doing a shield throw and build this run, off I go. It's the same with this. And it's a really clever game mode. The only challenge with it is that you can't pause or save it while you're playing solo. And it's like, I don't really vibe with that because I have a life and I need to get up and do things sometimes, So hopefully they patch that in eventually. But look, bottom line, Homeworld has fantastic vibes. And I think they've got most of the fundamentals correct for what will be something they'll build out over time. The mod scene will be big. They've actually got mods built into the menu for it. They'll add additional content to the game, particularly on the roguelite stuff. They have like a year roadmap where they're going to be adding additional content. They'll do bug fixes and rebalancing and whatever else. I put this as like a check it out at some point kind of game, right? Maybe it's not a day one purchase for you, but I think it's definitely worth adding to your wish list and maybe grabbing on sale in future. If you really love Homeworld, yeah, just grab it straight away. It's great to play Homeworld again. I really did have a great time immersing myself in that feeling again that comes from playing a Homeworld game. But it's definitely got some work ahead of it. So yeah, that's Homeworld 3. Yep.
Lucy, where do we begin with you? You've played a lot. You've been busy.
Yeah.
I have been gaming.
Calm down, Lucy.
I will say I have not got around to Hades 2 yet, or 1000 X Resist or whatever it's called, or Crow Country, or was it the Cryptmancer game?
Or Animal Well.
I started Animal Well, but
you did?
I did, but I have not put a significant amount of time in it to completely get it. But so I think next week I'm traveling a lot, so I will have it for next episode. I'm excited about it. I finished Little Kitty Big City because of course I did.
Of course you did. Is it good? Is it actually a good video game, or is it just like some cute dumb fun?
I think it's a nice mix. I think it has the kind of playfulness of Untitled Goose Game, and it doesn't have like the, it's cute. But I don't mean that in a horrible way. I don't mean it's like, oh, it's a cozy, wholesome game. Yes, it is, but it's like, it has a lot more going for it. The puzzles are really fun. It's just a delightful little game that you can finish in like 3 hours. You just play a cat and you have to help people out. And you were on a thing and you fell down and you have to get back up there. And so I really enjoyed it. I did it in 2 sittings.
Nice.
Just a very delightful game. I played Abiotic Factor on a Giant Bomb stream last week or the week before. That was really
I've never even heard of this. What is this?
This is
survival,
the one
it's
that's
like you're in like Black Mesa Lab, but it's like survival and weird.
Yes, and there are these monsters that are coming to get you, and you are all teamed up in a big group. I think there was like 6 of us playing. Everyone, and there's the thing where it's like you have to learn how to craft things that'll help you survive. So you learn how to craft weapons. You learn you can even grow your own food. There's radiations. You have to find ways to get rid of radiation. The only problem is I had a lot of fun with this game. Like, I don't think it's the kind of game that I will kind of keep up with. I enjoyed playing it with the Giant Bomb lot, obviously, because it's a lot of fun. There's points where, Grub killed himself and blamed Mike Minotti. It's got
classic Grub.
It's got
this is just Half-Life, by the way, as I'm watching it. I'm like, damn.
It's Unfortunate Spacemen people,
it's like,
I think.
It's co-op shenanigans in the Black Mesa Research Facility.
Yeah. It's like absolutely,
how has no one done this before? This is genius.
And it's really fun. It's got a really good sense of humor. It's not the kind of game that I will keep up with, but there's a really fun bit about like just going off and, hearing down the side, because it's got what the hell's it called? Like distance voice chat.
Oh yeah, positional audio.
Yeah.
And so it's like proximity chat.
Proximity chat. Thank you. And it's like I could hear Jan like in trouble, getting killed by a giant robot, and I'd be like, oh my god, but I wouldn't have anything. And I'd have a broken leg, and Grub would have to splint it for me. Like there's a lot of stuff in that I really enjoyed, but it did make me incredibly motion sick. So yeah.
Right. Bummer.
Rusty's Retirement. I'm blasting through these because we've got a hard stop, so I'm just like
we do.
But Rusty's Retirement is an idle farm game that if
I've heard of this.
If you've been in a meeting with me for the last week or so and I maybe have been a little distracted, it's because I am building my farm. It's just it works on Mac, which is very dangerous for me because I use a Mac at work, but it's just I feel like the progress comes at a good pace. It doesn't really waste your time. It's cute. It's got like little fun to it. There's a real feeling of satisfaction when you're growing crops. And when you first start expanding, you spend that 6,000 and you expand your farm. It feels really good. I don't know how long I'm going to keep playing it for, but I'm really enjoying it for right now.
Did you guys mess with Farmville back in the day? Did you guys fuck with Farmville?
Not really. Never. I tried it, but I didn't have like a ton of internet time back when Farmville was really popping off. Like I wasn't as wired in.
It was something. It was incredible. That and Mafia Wars. You were kind of just looking at like data spreadsheets on MySpace, but it was cool. It was cool.
Yeah.
But the big game that I played, again in 2 sittings, that I loved, and I know that not everyone is, but Indica. The Nun game.
Yeah.
So I
can't believe they made a Nun game. They finally did it.
They finally did it. The Mad Lads. I loved Indica. I don't want to spoil too much about it because I think it is such an unusual game. It really does. There are points where even if you watch the trailer, like the trailer doesn't really give you an indication of what the game is because it kind of takes the piss about the fact that the game pulls from all these different genres and themes. And I will say as well, there's a content warning on the Steam page. Read it. I definitely know people have replied to my tweet and said that like something happened and they just did not really want to, like, it gets heavy is what I'm saying. I really enjoyed it as someone who grew up Catholic. It's based on, so the Indica is a nun in an alternate Russia in the 19th century, and she is shunned by the other nuns, the judgy nuns, because basically she's carrying around a demon or the devil who talks to her and just constantly, like, she can't do anything. And it's this really cool exploration of what religion means, like what being good means and what being bad means. And then she meets this prisoner who's escaped, and he claims that he has spoken to God. That's the story. The gameplay itself, I don't know where to begin with it because like I don't want to spoil too much. One cool mechanic that I do feel good talking about is the fact that sometimes when the voice in your head gets too much, it actively distorts what the level looks like, and so you pray to make it go back to how
there's a pray button.
There is a pray button.
Awesome.
So you pray to turn it back to how it was, but you have to kind of move between the two worlds to get to your goal, which is a very fun way through gameplay to talk about the constant argument that she's having within herself and with this prisoner who you're walking along with. They also do a really fun, like, I think it's delightful how they've done it with gamification as a part of the wider narrative. They've done some really clever things, and the ending is abrupt as hell, and I know some people hated it, but I thought it was really good. I loved it when
One of those people that like the end of The Sopranos, end of The Sopranos, huh?
It was bold as hell. It just goes, no, you're done. Some of the things I didn't jive with, like, I think towards the end, the puzzles are not as tight. Like, it's never really, too difficult, but there are some puzzles where I was like, I don't know if that works as well as you think it does. I loved it. I loved it so much. Anyway.
I'm so excited. I have it downloaded. I bought it. I'm gonna play it.
Indica.
It's like 90 gigs though.
Yeah,
it's a big boy.
It's a big boy.
I was like, what's up with this? Because I wanted to put it on my Steam Deck, and I'm like, I guess I'm not doing that.
Warzone?
I had the exact same thing. I had it on PC, and I wanted to put it on my Steam Deck, but it was too big. And then the console release is this week or next, I believe. So it's a cool game. Cool video game.
I'm excited for that one, actually. It looks really cool. Like, who thought that would be a game that should be made? Yeah. Like, who came up with the idea that we're like, you know what we're going to do? The Nun game. Like, who does that?
Nuns having fun.
And also, not like a pokey little, like, 2D side-scroller Nun
Untitled
game. This
Nun
is like
game.
It's like a full, just a nun going around being a jerk.
Nuns having fun.
So... That's anyway. Let's. That's a different Steam category right there.
Yeah. I replayed Hellblade, the original.
Yeah.
From 2017, I believe. Yeah. I did it specifically because of you, Luce, because you had been saying like, I got to make time to play it, and I was like, I'm gonna do that. So I did that because I wanted to revisit it because I remember loving the shit out of it when it released, and I just wanted to go back and see what all the fuss was all about, and it is very good. It was obvious to me then, and playing it, I was like, oh yeah, this is still a thing. It's very limited in terms of what you do gameplay wise, which I'm really excited to see how they expand upon that with the new game. Yeah. But a lot of the game boils down to combat encounters, walking around, and then solving light puzzles by looking at looking for shapes in the natural environment. Like to open a door, you need to find a triangle in the world. So you need to walk around and find like a tree that half fell down leaning up against the building, and you ADS on that, and then that unlocks the door. That stuff after a while gets a little old, but I think the game it's paced just right, and the length, it like doesn't totally overstay its welcome. And
hot 7 hours.
Is it?
Yeah, it's like
it was 2
hours.
sittings for me, so
Mwah.
it was like cool. The combat is also very, very cool, but simple and gets repetitive after a while. But the way it's animated, the clang of a parry, the flash, the enemy types look cool as hell. That game still has one of my favorite moments in video games when you open the doors to like the bridge to Helheim. And it's this wooden ramshackle bridge with like the wooden structure in front of you, and you're just walking, and then a guy comes out and he's like, let's fucking fight. And then you take out your sword, and you know, it was so good. So it has a lot of moments like that. The presentation, obviously, the story, like all of that is just out of this world. Senua as a character is incredibly striking. The actress's eyes, of course, is a lot of it, but also the fact that those eyes are highlighted by her war paint. And the fact that the character will look at the camera, that's what really does it for me. That's something I feel like I don't see in games a lot, where I'm like, woo, I am engaged suddenly so much more because I am directly being looked at and almost acknowledged. One thing I really picked up on this time around too is the psychosis, the voices in her head, and how the game with the clever directional audio and like the audio building, like you get the feeling, you get the tension. But this time around, I was able to really pick up more on like what those voices were saying and how there's like more like, aggressive, less aggressive, positive, negative, doubtful, all of them hitting, but also to see how there's one of the voices are kind of like, one of the voices is kind of almost like a narrative lead. And then there's all those other voices as a distraction. And then there's Senua herself. And sometimes Senua will say something, a voice will say something, and a narrative voice will say something. And it works like in this like wild symphony of like dialogue writing and voice acting that just like is like, holy shit, to see it go down.
I think it's so clever in combat, where the voices try and put you off, and they're like, if you get hit, they're like, no, she can't do it. But then they tell you if someone is going to hit you, or they tell you if there's someone behind you, or they tell you like, this is the last enemy. They insinuate it in a way that I think is really smart. Yeah. And it's really fun.
Especially because there's no, like, that's like the indicator, like that's the HUD, behind you. But then also sometimes I feel like it's like unreliable because I've gotten a couple of behind yous and there isn't really any enemy behind me. So it's just creative, it's clever. I wish there was a little bit more to do gameplay wise, but I was still just so along for that ride. The beauty of it visually, the performance, all of that. I just like what Ninja Theory does. And obviously, like, I'm glad we talked to them today. I'm like a big fan. But I still think it's worth trying to cram in and replay if anyone else out there has time, because you could blast through it pretty quickly. Yeah. But it's a cool experience. That's me. Cool. That's all I played. Yeah. With that, let's just jump over briefly to show and tell. This is every time we gather, we bring each other something that we've been doing that isn't a video game. So, Lucy, let's go with you first.
I think you should leave live.
Damn, you did. That was this. Yeah. That was this week. Oh yeah. Man,
it was really cool. I wasn't sure how it would work. If they were going to do skits on stage or whatever. Nope, they did. They aired unshown skits or skits that had been cut down. So, like there was a little bit from Little Buff Boys. Like there was little bits from that they showed. Has this ever happened to you? The guy, like that skit was originally like way longer. They brought out like Sam Richardson, Patty Harrison, people who have been in skits and have worked with Tim Robinson. It was awesome. It was a really fun night. I think it was a little like, as a show, it was a bit haphazard, like just kind of thrown together. But I loved it. I think you should leave as a thing that I quote all the time. And so those tickets as well, like it didn't feel like they really advertised the show. I saw it because someone in our news Slack dropped like a Dallas Evening News or whatever. Hey, I think you should leave is coming. I was like, I even went on the Ticketmaster page and they were not shouting about it. So I feel really lucky that we managed to snag tickets for that one. It was really fun.
I'm jealous.
Nice.
That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Ralph, what about you?
It's been a lot of not much right now. I tell you what I watched, actually. I watched The Abyss again.
Oh,
For
wow.
like the 20th time.
4K?
Yeah, but because they just released the 4K version. So I bought the 4K version.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And but the problem is Jim Cameron is like doing AI upscaling for his 4K stuff.
I saw that with this one, yeah.
Look, it's not as bad as some of the screenshots make it out. Because like if you really drill in on some screenshots, you're like, oh, okay, that looks kind of fucked. But like when you're watching it, you don't really focus on that. You just kind of focus on the fact that, well, it actually looks pretty fine. Like as in this, if I was to watch a shitty, like an older version of this, it would look way worse clearly. So I think you take the good with the bad. But yeah, really interesting to watch The Abyss after all these years, because the last time I watched it, I think was a long time ago, well before I was, I guess, more critical of the media I consume. Like I was not a critic in any capacity when I, watched The Abyss like 10 plus years ago, right? Watching it now, and I guess there's also just the passage of time, and Jim Cameron's like released a whole bunch of movies since then. Pretty much just 2 Avatar movies, I guess. But interesting to see how far he has come as a filmmaker since The Abyss, because there is some stuff in it structurally and in its dialogue and in its themes and in its final act where you're like, oh, this is interesting, isn't it? Stuff that I never really viewed it that way in the past. But it's a much clunkier film than anything else he has done. And it kind of makes it charming in a way. But yeah, you can definitely see how he has evolved, and I think that's really fascinating. So if you ever get a chance to check it out, it's on 4K now, and it looks good, but it's still just a really watchable film. And some of the sequences in it are still to this day incredible. And also, I was at the same time I was remarking, wow, how the fuck did he pull this off these years ago? Like, it is incredible that he managed to shoot these shots the way that he did. Like, it's unbelievable. So, I really recommend checking it out.
It's a good one. I also watched a movie. Was
it Ant-Man 3?
No, God. In anticipation of the new Monkey movie, I rewatched my favorite, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes from 2014.
Oh yeah,
this is
so good
because it's hard to get them mixed up. So it's the James Franco trilogy where James Franco started the monkey takeover, but this is the middle one with Jason Clarke. Australia's
I love that
own.
movie.
This movie fucks. Let me pitch it to people out there who have never watched it. A post-apocalyptic situation, right? Like a Last of Us type thing where like, oh, okay, like we're scrounging for supplies. Like what if you go out into the woods in this post-apocalyptic setting and all of a sudden a gang of apes roll up on you on horses with weapons. And you're like, oh shit. And then one of them stands up and yells at you in English. It's so scary. They do a good job of like making this concept actually terrifying. If you told me as a kid that they would do like a real Planet of the Apes movie where like it's legit, it's unbelievable. It's just a good, simple movie. And I like that it is somewhat contained where you can just watch this one and you get a sense for the world. You get a character arc with Caesar, the leader of the apes. And it's just really cool. It's cool as hell. Yeah, I could go on about it, but I think I'll save it at that. Apes together strong. You know what I'm saying?
Hell yeah.
Apes together strong. I often think about that in so many scenarios.
Yeah.
Just like randomly whenever two people are working together or whenever I need some help, I think, apes together strong.
Us doing this good podcast.
Yeah. That's right, this podcast. Apes together strong.
Anytime we've all been in a room and we plan something together, that's it.
Because what's the thing they do? They do the hand up or something? Like
the hand for like the yeah. Man, I hope that new one's good. I haven't seen it.
I really want to see it.
I hear it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I hear it's pretty good. Like they haven't dropped the ball. The ratings aren't as high as the previous ones, but it's still meant to be like solid. So yeah.
Cool. When are we going to get Dr. Zaius back in the mix? That's what I want to know.
Dr. Zaius, Dr.
I
Zaius.
knew you were going to do it. I knew you were going to do the music. The
Saw it
musical.
during the rounds on Twitter. The tweet this week was literally Simpsons devoted 2 minutes and 21 seconds to this gag because they knew it was that good.
Yes.
And then I watched it again. I hadn't seen that sequence in years, and I was like,
I did the
this
same
is
thing.
actually genius. This is flawless. This is peak comedy. There is a reason we were as obsessed with The Simpsons as we were, and it's exactly this scene, you know?
God bless them. Well, with that, I think just that was another episode. Thank you to you guys, but also to Ryan and Joe from Airship Syndicate, to Dom from Ninja Theory for joining us. Some great conversations, and to all of you folks for listening out there. You know, you can always send us questions via the email.
What is the
contact@friendspersecond.com.
Yay.
It's not on screen. You saw my eyes scrambling desperately
Oh, we did,
looking
that's
for
right.
it, but I tapped my brain for once. Apes together are strong, you know? With that, thank you folks for listening. You know, rating us on podcast places helps us. We will see you in the next one. We are every other week. We are Friends Per Second. Tie your shoes and go to bed.